Chapter 533, A Gift. After looking through the slips with tool refining and spell formation information, the young woman was quickly sweeping through a Jade slip that introduced medicine pill formulas and demon beasts. After she was done with it, she moved on to the next Jade lip on the table. Immediately after immersing her spiritual sense into it, she was stunned. It contained a cultivation art known as the Golden True Arts. Out of curiosity, she read through it for a moment before her attention was completely drawn in. She read the Jade slip for no less than an hour before withdrawing her spiritual sense in a daze. She wore an expression of fear on her face. This Golden True Arts was the precious top-grade cultivation art of a sect. Why was its cultivation incantation so casually placed on a table without any restrictions guarding it? Although the young woman knew the cultivation art's value, she still reluctantly put it back in its original place after some hesitation. Now she was even more interested in looking through the rest of the Jade slips on the table. Half a day later, the young woman had finished browsing through all of the Jade slips on the table. A vast majority of the Jade slips contained teachings about either formation spells or medicine pills. Only a small number contained cultivation arts, but there wasn't a single one present that wasn't top grade. There was one particular cultivation art, the Coiling Jade Arts, that left her particularly tempted. The Azure Spirit Sect was only a tiny sect in the scattered star seas. Its main cultivation art, the Azure Spirit Arts, was merely a standard cultivation art. It couldn't possibly compete in terms of might with the Coiling Jade Arts. After glancing through the Jade slips, her mind wandered for a moment before recalling that there were still other places that she had yet to explore. She left the stone room and walked back to the large hall. Of the remaining 3 arched doors, there were 2 that were guarded by puppets, leaving her with only one that she could enter. As a result, the young woman entered the only unguarded door. After entering, she was left stunned and remained motionless for quite a while. There was a 60-meter-wide hall with a 30-meter-wide spell formation placed at its center. The spell formation released a barrier of translucent, faint-red light. The light fluctuated and sparkled intermittently, revealing a magnificent sight. The light barrier contained dozens of variously fashioned swords, spears, and other such items. There were a few that released a clear ring, and some that chased after one another, but all of them appeared to possess intelligence. Outside of the light barrier, there were 2 layers of crude wooden racks lining the walls. Each of the racks held a variety of magic tools. Although they didn't have a light barrier blocking them, they each flickered with brilliant light and contained vigorous amounts of spiritual qi. Although the young woman hadn't seen any of them before, she was able to tell that the items contained inside the light barrier were like the magic treasures from legend with the intelligence that they displayed. The young woman had always yearned to look at such magic treasures, but unfortunately there were just far too many before her. Eyes filled with amazement, she couldn't bring herself to believe what she was seeing. A long while later, she finally came to her senses. After further looking at the light barrier with a strange expression, she hesitantly walked towards the wooden racks. She casually took a pitch-black ruler and examined it, discovering that the unremarkable item was actually a high-grade magic tool. But having already experienced far too many surprises before this, she hardly revealed any shock at the discovery. She then began to look through each of the magic tools on the racks, all of which were either high or top grade. There was nothing of inferior quality present. Had the young woman managed to acquire one of these magic tools in the past, she would have been immensely excited. Now, after glancing at the many magic treasures and hundreds of magic tools, the young woman left the room with empty hands, after recalling that she was now but a cultivation vessel. 2 days later, inside the stone room with the Jade slips, the young girl was sitting down on a round stone block. She was concentrating on the contents of the Jade slip in her hand. The Coiling Jade Arts are quite suitable for a female cultivator, though they were acquired by male cultivator, namely me. A man's gentle voice suddenly came from the doorway. The young woman felt her heart tremble and quickly withdrew her spiritual sense. She then flusteredly turned around. She saw a blue-robed youth with an ordinary appearance standing by the door. He was looking at her with a smile. Gong Sun Zing hesitantly asked, "Your senior?" Although his voice was somewhat similar, this gentle-faced youth was truly too young. It was completely different from what she had imagined. Having experienced so many astonishing things, the young woman had come to expect the senior to be an old man with profound, mystical abilities. She even apprehensively guessed that he was a temperamental eccentric. "What, am I not as expected?" The youth was Han Li, who had just left seclusion. He walked into the room with a faint smile. "Senior, these cultivation arts For some unknown reason, she inwardly felt relieved upon discovering that Han Li was the owner of that expert's voice. However, she still stuttered trying to come up with an explanation. Han Li indifferently said, "It doesn't matter. Since I didn't forbid you from entering, I was allowing you to choose a cultivation art." "Many thanks to Senior." The woman expressed unconcealed happiness with delightful charm. Upon seeing the young woman's excitement, Han Li unconsciously felt a tinge of emotion. Han Li smiled and casually asked, "It's been a while since I've been to the outside. Would Lady Gongsun happen to know anywhere in the seas that one might be able to trade?" The young woman's smile vanished as if she had thought of something. After quickly taking a peek at Han Li, she lowered her head and softly said, "If one wishes to trade, about half a month south, there is a barren island with a market city. The nearby cultivators conduct trade there. I heard that there were several core formation cultivators that joined hands to keep the peace there. Does Senior require a map?" Han Li confidently said, "I must make a trip there. Naturally, a map would be good." The young woman flusteredly took out a jade slip from her storage pouch and handed it over to Han Li with a red face. Han Li smiled and reached out to take the jade slip. At the same time, a strange expression flickered from his eyes when he saw the young woman's flushed, tender face. He suddenly reached out to touch her soft, luscious hair. Gongsun Xing's heart trembled with slight fear, but she didn't shrink back. She only unconsciously turned her head away. At that moment, Han Li's soft voice entered her ear, "Don't be afraid. Come to my bedroom tonight, don't forget." After he said this, he left the room without further hesitation. When Gongsun Xing heard these dubious words, she felt her heart jump and her face turned crimson, revealing an adorable appearance of complete embarrassment. When night arrived, she arrived outside Han Li's bedroom in a complicated mood. She entered the stone room as she nibbled on her lips, but she was left surprised by what she saw. The bedroom had no one inside. There was only a stone desk with an unfurled scroll on it. After a moment of hesitation, Gongsun Xing walked over puzzled and lowered her head, reading, "Your filial behavior is quite laudable. I give all the remaining treasures in the cave residence to you. Don't show them to others, or you will attract calamity upon yourself. Do your best." There was nothing else after that, leaving the young woman at a complete loss. She could only feel blank confusion along with an indescribable emotion. At that moment, Han Li had already flown 500 kilometers away from the small island in a streak of azure light. Smiling, Han Li leisurely thought, "I'm sure that girl must be completely baffled. Anyone going through such an unpredictable experience should be left amazed for at least half a day." When he had left the sea mist, he had stripped the cave residence of everything apart from the jade slip containing the coiling jade arts, numerous unwanted magic tools, along with a few medicine pills and 2 looted magic treasures that he left behind specifically for the girl. These items would surely allow the young woman to tread to future heights that are rarely reached on the path of cultivation. This rare showing of immense generosity wasn't due to a sudden feeling of tenderness towards the fairer sex, but rather, the young woman's resolve to sacrifice herself for her father had deeply moved Han Li. If Han Li had any regrets before setting foot on the path of cultivation, it would be that he was unable to fulfill his filial duties to his parents after reaching adulthood. Although he had secretly made arrangements with the Seven Mysteries Sect master for his family, it didn't offset the sense of loss he felt deep in his heart. Additionally, the young woman's appearance had reminded Han Li of the last he had seen his little sister when she had gotten married. As such, he had deliberately used the pretense of having the woman as a cultivation vessel in order to give her a few benefits. Of course, the magic tools and treasures that Han Li had left for her posed little to no value to him. Since the items would remain useless on him, it would be better for him to take the opportunity to give them to the girl, providing her the assistance to tread farther on the path of immortal cultivation. The woman's spiritual roots were also inferior, just like his own had been. As for Han Li's cave residence, he had already decided that he would abandon the island the next time he left, long before these people had arrived. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 534, Rescue from Demon Beasts. After Han Li reached mid-core formation stage, he had remained in seclusion for an additional 20 years. During this time, He still hadn't exhausted all of his medicine pills and carried about a smaller portion of them in his storage pouch. His early departure from seclusion without having yet consumed all of his medicine pills was due to neither restlessness nor impatience. It was because he had encountered a bottleneck as he neared late core formation stage. Until he broke through the obstruction, his cultivation wouldn't progress in the slightest even if he used more medicine pills. These breakthroughs were left completely up to destiny or fortunate encounters. There were absolutely no established methods to break through such a bottleneck. However, in the past, cultivators had managed to break through this stage through merely cultivating, touring the world, or battling in a life or death struggle. Each occurrence was entirely unexpected. As such, Han Li was unwilling to vainly waste his time in seclusion, and he prepared to set out to find the legendary demon Echo Grass. Perhaps he would even happen to unexpectedly break through the bottleneck during this journey. Because he didn't know how long the trip would take, Han Li didn't dare to leave the ninth spirit ginseng inside the cave. This was yet another reason he had decided to completely abandon the residence inside the small misty island. As for the ninth spirit ginseng, it periodically required Earth Chi for preservation. Although this had proved to be somewhat troublesome before Han Li entered mid-core formation stage, it no longer presented a problem. Han Li already had the ability to draw out an island's Earth Essence Chi and pour it into the spirit ginseng's body, ensuring its continued survival. Han Li was currently flying in the direction of the market city that the young woman had spoken of. It was the only place where cultivators frequently passed through that Han Li could potentially find information on any grade 8 demon beasts. When that time came, he would have to think of a method to acquire the demon Echo Grass. As for any thoughts of being able to directly purchase it, he didn't believe such a fortuitous event could occur. Han Li flew at an extremely fast speed. Although the young woman said it would take half a month to reach the market city, in Han Li's case, it would only take a few days at most at his full speed. 2 days later, as Han Li was hurrying on his way, he suddenly spotted a red streak of light flying off in the distance. It was being relentlessly pursued by several balls of gray chi. When Han Li saw this, he unconsciously raised his eyebrows, and after some thought he muttered an unintelligible incantation. Soon, a series of cracks sounded out from within his body with increasing frequency. Simultaneously, azure light covered his face. A moment later, Han Li's figure suddenly grew a few inches taller. The azure light disappeared to reveal the face of an unfamiliar yellowish man. This was one of the secret techniques from the profound yin arts that Han Li had meticulously cultivated during his seclusion, the appearance exchange art. Not only could this secret technique allow oneself to shrink or lengthen any body part at will, one could also control the thickness of one's flesh and change the color of one's skin in an instant. It was absolutely a top-grade disguise technique. Han Li reckoned that this cultivation art was on par with the disguise techniques of legend. Even cultivators of a higher grade would be unable to easily see through his disguise. Hence, it was included amongst the collection of profound yin arts. The only shortcoming of the secret technique was that once the technique was used, one could only use 70% of their magic power at most. If one exceeded this limit in a fight, the disguise would dissolve and reveal one's true appearance. However, Han Li didn't care about this in the least. Whenever he donned his disguise, he likely didn't want to reveal his true strength anyways. As such, the limit shouldn't pose much of a problem to him. Just after Han Li changed his appearance, the streak of red light discovered his location and wildly flew in Han Li's direction as if it were their only hope at life. As for the gray balls of chi chasing after the red streak, they were clearly demon beasts that ranged around grade 3 and 4. When Han Li saw this, he immediately stopped and let out a long sigh. He didn't sigh because trouble came knocking on his door, but because the person flying towards him didn't care in the slightest about whether or not he could deal with the demon beasts. It seemed the man being chased wished to drag himself down along with Han Li. As he did this without any hesitation, there wasn't much else to say about the unknown man's nature. Han Li, who had recently felt greatly touched by Gong Sunzing's display of familial piety, once again questioned the complexity of human nature. One simply couldn't lump these things all together. Fellow Taoist, please save me. I Huang Mingli will definitely express my gratitude towards you. A shriveled old man with a wicked appearance directly flew towards Han Li with a panicked expression. He was quite shrewd. Although he hadn't made out Han Li's true cultivation, he knew that his life was saved after seeing Han Li's steadfast, unshakable bearing. Han Li calmly watched the old man flying at him with an indifferent expression. He then lazily raised his hand and shot out 5 giant azure sword streaks, instantly tying down the 5 demon beasts chasing after him. When the old man saw this, he happily let out a long breath of relief and released a fire ring magic tool to attack the 5 demon beasts. Han Li cast a sideways glance at the old man. The old man's cultivation was at peak foundation establishment, the false core stage. It was no wonder why he had been able to flee from a joint attack by so many grade 4 demon beasts. Han Li turned his gaze back to the demon beasts and commanded the several streaks of swordlight to slowly surround them in a calm display of his overwhelming strength. When the old man saw this, his spirit was greatly roused, and he controlled his fire attribute magic tool with increasingly fierce intensity as he struck the now vulnerable demon beasts. After another moment passed, Han Li felt it was about time to end the battle and had the azure essence sword streaks exterminate the demon beasts. With the demon beasts dead, the small old man already realized that Han Li was a core formation cultivator. As such, he respectfully saluted him and said, "Many thanks for Senior's rescue. Could it be that Senior wishes to head to South Dark City?" Han Li calmly nodded. "That's right. I wish to head to the city to trade for a few items." Huang Mingli's eyes shifted around for a moment and he bitterly smiled before saying, "Then Senior need not continue. The trip would be in vain." Han Li's expression stirred and he asked with surprise, "What happened?" As he faced a core formation cultivator, the small old man carefully explained, "Several days ago at South Dark City, there were a few low-grade demon beasts that unexpectedly arrived. Although a majority were killed the next day, a swarm of grade 4 and 5 demon beasts were brought over to the city by the survivors from the previous day. A great number of the city's cultivators had been harmed, forcing us to break through the demon beast siege. I was among those who escaped. However, I didn't expect to come across another group of demon beasts on my way out." "According to what you've said, this trip was for nothing." Han Li frowned and wore a sullen expression. Huang Mingli's eyes faintly flickered before revealing a grin with crooked teeth. He then secretly said, "Well, if Senior truly wishes to trade, this little old man knows of another place. The items there are all precious. One must be at Foundation establishment or higher to enter the city along with having a referral. Additionally, the market city frequently changes location. This old man currently has the qualifications to give you a referral to the city. If Senior wishes to go, Junior will lead the way as payment for saving his life." Han Li paused for a moment before pensively saying, "Are you talking about a secret city?" The old man wore an embarrassed expression and quickly explained, "Senior must think me silly. The market city can't be considered to be secret. They merely fear conflict. Once the demon beasts discover it, it will be the city's end." "So it's like that." Han Li couldn't help but smile after hearing this. He then asked, "How far away is this place?" Huang Mingli seemed quite familiar with this market city and instantly replied, "If we hurry, we should be able to reach it in half a month's time. By then the market city should have just opened." After some consideration, Han Li replied, "All right, I'll go along with you." "Great." Huang Mingli revealed an excited expression and paused as if he had suddenly thought of something. Senior, please wait a moment." He hurriedly said a word of apology before shooting straight down to the sea, where the corpses of the demon beasts were floating. When Han Li saw this, he knowingly smiled. A short moment later, the small old man dismembered the demon beasts with great familiarity and placed their parts into his storage pouch. He then flew back into the sky with high spirits. "I've made an embarrassment of myself. While these demon beasts certainly wouldn't have caught Senior's eyes, they are quite valuable to this Junior." The old man spoke with slight embarrassment. After all, those 5 demon beasts had all been slain by Han Li. "It's nothing. Those demon beasts had no value to me anyways. Let's hurry." Han Li shook his head and urged him with an unchanged expression. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 535, Trade Gathering. When Huang Mingli heard Han Li's desire to depart, he agreed with an embarrassed smile. He then flew off to the east on his magic tool while Han Li leisurely followed after him with a calm expression. As Huang Mingli flew, he turned his head to steal a glance at Han Li's face and carefully asked, "Senior's face is quite unfamiliar. Have you been in secluded cultivation for a long time? Junior might have heard of your name before." Han Li casually said, "My surname is Li. I've remained in my cave residence for secluded cultivation until recently when I finally formed my core. It isn't surprising that fellow Taoist Huang hadn't heard of me before. Of course, Han Li didn't give his real name. The small old man didn't notice anything amiss from Han Li, and could only speak words of congratulations despite still holding a few doubts in his heart. Huang Mingli was quite tactful and didn't further inquire about Han Li. Instead, he took the initiative to tell Han Li about a few of the recent confrontations between cultivators and demon beasts. However, from his deep sighs, it seemed the old man didn't hold much hope towards humanity's future in the outer star seas. Although the endless conversation was almost entirely one-sided, Han Li had gained a much greater understanding towards the current circumstances of the outer star seas. Nothing strange occurred in the following half-month, allowing Han Li and the small old man to eventually spot a small, peaceful island in the distance. This island was only about 50 kilometers in area and possessed sparse amounts of spiritual qi. Apart from a small growth of vegetation, the island only consisted of bare gray rock and appeared like any other desolate island. It was an optimal location for a secret city. But even in that case, about half a day out, Han Li and the old man concealed their flight and approached the island under the guise of concealment techniques. This, of course, was a requirement for entering the secret city. When Huang Mingli beseeched him to conceal himself, Han Li silently complied without any complaint. This was a great relief to Huang Mingli, as core formation cultivators weren't always particularly easy to deal with in his experience. Huang Mingli flew a circle around the small island before landing on a heap of rocks. When Han Li saw this, a strange expression flickered from his eyes. If he wasn't mistaken, there shouldn't be any restrictions there. Could it be? As Han Li continued to mull this over, Huang Mingli stepped towards a large rock beside him and knocked 3 times on the stone with practiced familiarity. A short moment later, the huge rock suddenly split open to reveal a 3-meter-wide hole. Huang Mingli immediately stepped into the hole and softly said a few words into it. He then turned to Han Li and shouted, "Senior Li, it's right here. Let's go in." Han Li indifferently looked down and descended from the sky. The hole led to a set of slanted stone stairs. To the side of the stairs stood a gray-robed, white-haired old man with a late foundation establishment cultivation. Upon seeing Han Li enter, the old man smiled at him and spoke in a manner that was neither arrogant nor humble. "Senior, welcome to our market city. I hope Senior will be able to find what he needs." "I hope so as well," Han Li calmly replied as he climbed down the stairs. Han Li realized that in order to prevent any demon beasts from detecting spiritual qi, formation spells couldn't be established. As such, the only option left to maintain secrecy was building everything underground. After walking down the stairs for a short time, Han Li's eyes brightened. There was an expansive underground world before him. The ceiling was 20 meters high with occasional pillars of transformed gray stone supporting it. There were many small square buildings at the center of the cavern, each sporting their own sign. There were over 100 cultivators trading amongst these stone buildings. At Han Li's side, Huang Mingli pointed to a set of descending stairs beside a stone pillar and said, "Senior Li, this floor is only for trading ordinary items. If Senior wishes to acquire rare materials, it would be best to go down to the next floor." Han Li glanced at the stone stairs but didn't move. He asked with a deep voice, "If I wanted information on the whereabouts of a high-grade demon beast nest, where could I find it?" Huang Mingli was obviously startled upon hearing this. A trace of confusion flickered from his eyes before he answered with great familiarity. "It would depend on what grade of demon beast Senior requires information about. If it's grade 5 or 6 demon beasts, Senior can head over to the Wind Whisper Pavilion. They specialize in selling the whereabouts of difficult-to-acquire treasures and high-grade demon beasts, allowing one to acquire them based on their own skill. However, they won't have any information on demon beasts of a higher grade. In that case, your only option would be to ask other core formation seniors. After all, the whereabouts of demon beasts of that grade aren't easily divulged. Senior could participate in the trade gathering specifically for core formation cultivators. Perhaps that is where Senior can find what he is looking for." Trade gathering. Han Li's expression revealed a trace of excitement. Huang Mingli carefully explained, "That's right. Normally, only other core formation cultivators have the materials and treasures that a core formation cultivator would need. As a result, every time the market city opens, the city lord will hold a meeting where seniors gather together for a private, small-scale exchange, where they can trade for what they wish. The city lord would also take out several rare items for the meeting as well. With a faint smile, Han Li slowly asked, "When does this trade gathering take place?" The small old man promptly replied, "Senior Li will likely have to wait a few more days. I reckon around halfway through the opening of the market city, Senior will receive an invitation to join." When Han Li heard this, he narrowed his eyes and wore a pensive expression as if he were thinking about it. A short moment later, he glanced at Huang Mingli and spoke without restraint. "Fellow Taoist Huang, I plan on going the rest of the way alone, so we'll be parting ways here. I no longer require your assistance." Han Li didn't wish to have someone following him around while he was searching for the 1,000 leaves due. The small old man wasn't particularly surprised by Han Li's words. With a beaming smile, he said, "Senior's word suits Junior's intentions as well. Junior happens to want to go buy a few materials. Then I will bid you goodbye. If Senior requires any further assistance, then please do not hesitate to find me." Huang Mingli respectfully saluted Han Li and bid his farewells. He then headed into a nearby materials store. It seemed he wished to first sell off those demon breast corpses from before. Han Li was quite satisfied with how tactful and quick-witted the old man had behaved. He swept his gaze past the nearby stores and walked into the store across from him with his arms behind his back. The first store he entered had piles of all sorts of medicinal ingredients. Inside a quiet room, Han Li was resting with eyes closed. He felt somewhat gloomy. During his first day in the market city, he had browsed both floors of the market city and found plenty of demon echo grass, but none that had grown near a grade 8 demon beast. In addition, the Wind Whistle Pavilion didn't have any information on demon beasts of grade 7 or higher. He could only wait for when the trade gathering convened and see if any other core formation cultivators had relevant information. In the following 2 days, he had no intention of heading out and rented a quiet room specifically to cultivate and see whether or not he could break through his current bottleneck. In the end, he had achieved nothing. Thumps came from the door of his room. Although Han Li had anticipated this, he still indifferently asked, "What is it?" A woman's pleasant voice respectfully said, "Senior Li, Junior is under orders to invite you to the trade gathering. Would Senior be interested in participating?" Han Li slowly replied, "Yes, of course I am." He then opened the stone door and walked out of the room. There was a white-clothed woman standing outside with a lowered head, respectfully waiting for him. When she saw Han Li appear, she immediately raised her head and revealed a charming face. When Han Li saw the woman's beautiful face, he felt his heart tremble. After staring at the woman's face, a flicker of astonishment appeared within his eyes. How could it be her? What is she doing here? Han Li thought, astonished. The woman saw Han Li staring at her, causing her to blush. She then lowered her head and uncomfortably asked, "Senior, is something wrong?" Han Li quickly regained his bearings and calmly said, "It's nothing. Lead the way." The white-clothed woman faintly felt that something was amiss, but she respectfully agreed and walked away with calm steps. Gazing at the woman's silhouette, Han Li unconsciously frowned and wore a face full of confusion. Passing through the plaza of the second floor, the woman brought Han Li to a remote stone wall. The woman gently pressed her hand against the wall, creating ripples of white light and revealing a stone door covered in talisman characters. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 536, A Display of Women. "Senior Li, please enter." The woman pushed the stone door open and respectfully invited Han Li inside. Han Li nodded and walked in without another word as the woman closely followed after him. The stone door then closed by itself and disappeared, returning the wall to its previous unremarkable appearance. After entering, Han Li saw a gray stone passageway that didn't appear very long based on the white light he saw faintly shining at the end. Han Li silently walked forward and made a turn at the end of the passage, suddenly facing a wide-open stone door. There was a gloomy middle-aged mid-core formation cultivator standing outside the doorway. When he saw Han Li appear, he immediately smiled and said, "So your fellow Taoist Li, I am Xianxia, the master of the city. Welcome to my trade meeting. Nearly all of the fellow Taoists have already arrived." The Confucian scholar surnamed Yun was very courteous to Han Li. He then indifferently turned to the woman and said, "Young lady Wen, properly attend to brother Li. Make sure not to neglect him." Fellow Taoist Wen. There was no longer any doubt regarding the woman's identity. She was Wen Qiang's daughter, the exquisite sound sex Wen Siyuan. Wen Qiang was a qi condensation cultivator that met Han Li at Stalwart Star Island. Han Li met him once again many years later along with his daughter in chapter 430. Just what had happened for her to appear at this place? It had caused Han Li no small amount of amazement. Naturally, since he had used the appearance exchange arts, the woman was unable to recognize him. When Wen Siyu heard him, her flowery expression changed and she hastily acknowledged him. Although Han Li didn't turn around, he could faintly perceive that Wen Siyu was very fearful of Yun Tianxiao. A strange expression flickered within Han Li's eyes, but he merely smiled and casually said a few words of formality before entering. The door led to a large square hall with a huge round table at its center. The table had over a dozen remarkably wide armchairs surrounding it. Most of the chairs were already occupied by other cultivators. But when Han Li clearly saw the circumstances in the room, he wore a baffled expression. Apart from two female core formation cultivators that were sitting alone, the male core formation cultivators were each nestled together with a gorgeous and alluring female cultivator. These female cultivators were either at peak qi condensation or early foundation establishment, and each of them were all young, exceptional beauties. While Han Li looked at this in a daze, he suddenly smelled a sweet fragrance, and a soft, trembling body stood close by his side. Han Li's body tensed up and he slowly turned around to see a stiff, beautiful face. When Siyu had taken the initiative to draw closer to him, allowing him to catch a whiff of her intoxicating scent. Han Li frowned, but he didn't push away the woman in an act of false sophistry. Instead, he again glanced at the female cultivators at the male core formation cultivators' sides with a gaze of understanding. After some thought, he wrapped his arm around the woman's waist and headed towards an empty armchair before sitting down. Wen Siyu did the same as the other female cultivators, and reluctantly sat alongside him while leaning into Han Li's chest. For the moment, Han Li's chest had the warm company of a beautiful woman. Just as Wen Siyu silently pressed her stiffened body against Han Li relaxed the arm he had wrapped around her waist. Wen Siyu was stunned for a moment. She then unconsciously glanced at Han with a trace of bewilderment. At that moment, Han Li was calmly examining the others in the room. The 8 other core formation cultivators had naturally gazed in Han Li's direction as well. Although they found Han Li's appearance strange, they didn't reveal it on their faces. Instead, most of the people looked at Han Li with a kind smile. Han Li's expression relaxed and he returned the gesture. A short moment later, 6 more core formation cultivators entered the hall, each with a young, beautiful female cultivator at their side. Han Li watched this with an ordinary expression, but his heart felt amazement. Yun Tianxiao must have possessed significant skill to have found so many young and beautiful female cultivators. All of their cultivations weren't shallow either, but they were still at varying levels. Just as Han Li pondered this, Yun Tianxiao finally entered the hall with a graceful and elegant beauty wrapped around his arm. The woman was at late foundation establishment stage. Lady Fan, Han Li's heart was shaken upon seeing her. She is the exquisite sound sex envoy of the right Lady Fan. It seems she has a somewhat deep relationship with the city master. This trade gathering should prove to be quite interesting. Despite his excitement and the expectations in his heart, Han Li was able to maintain his calm expression. Wen Siyu faintly trembled next to Han Li. A faint, painful groan left her dainty mouth. It sounded as if it contained flustered embarrassment. Han Li was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but puzzlingly glance at her. He found her face to be flushed red and bashful. He also discovered that his arm had unknowingly grasped onto her chest. He even felt his fingers pinching onto something stiff and round. This soft, overwhelming sensation shook the depths of Han Li's soul. He immediately withdrew his hand out of instinct. When Siyu's smooth, delicate neck was now flushed red, she hesitantly raised her head and gazed at Han Li's face with a trace of astonishment. A trace of discomfort faintly appeared on Han Li's face, but he pretended not to notice, relaxing the arm he had around her. Although he had never thought of himself as a man of honor, this woman could be considered an acquaintance, causing Han Li to be somewhat embarrassed. Han Li discovered that this strange display wasn't noticed by anybody else in the room. Their attention had been captured by Yun Tianxiao, who had already sat in the main chair with Lady Fan gracefully poised at his side. Yun Tianxiao widely smiled and said, "I am truly honored to have you 13 fellow Taoists participate in this trade meeting. Although there were two fellow Taoists that had to leave early, this trade meeting is already the largest one yet. That is about all I have to say. Everyone can now take out their items. Give your items a brief introduction and then everyone can start bidding or offer in exchange. Accept whatever offer pleases you. He then turned his head to the fat, blue-robed old man and smiled. He was clearly indicating for him to start. As of current, the fat old man was closely embracing the body of a dainty female cultivator. Upon seeing Xianxia smile, he reluctantly relaxed his grip on her waist and leisurely said, "Since this is the case, I will start. I've brought quite a few good items this time around. I'm more than willing to exchange them for any of the materials that I require." After that was said, the old man stood up and placed a storage pouch from his waist onto the table. Numerous items suddenly appeared on the table in a vortex of spinning red light. The spiritual chi that the items emitted appeared significant. 3 heavenly spirit beads, an ambusher shark demon core, the hide of an ocean-form beast. The old man gave a proud introduction for each of his items, impressing no small number of the cultivators at the table. It was clear that each of these items were quite rare. And Li couldn't help but coldly smile at the items. While these items could be considered truly valuable to ordinary core formation cultivators, they were completely unremarkable to him. The rarest item amongst them, the ambusher sharp demon core, was only a grade 6 demon core. Han Li had personally exterminated at least 8 demon beasts of that specific type. When the fat old man finished giving an introduction to his items, he sat back down and once again embraced the dainty woman at his side. He had a face full of arrogance. The chi condensation woman was originally somewhat unwilling to be held by him, but now her eyes unconsciously glowed with a soft light. After the old man sat down, the person who sat next to him, an eccentric with a red embroidered headband, dryly coughed and unsteadily stood. This person was rather shriveled and appeared as if a stiff breeze would blow him over. "I've only brought one item, the beast egg of the grade 5 darkle worm." He spoke unhurriedly and took out a yellow beast egg from his robes shortly after he finished speaking. It was the size of a chicken egg. Darkle worm. Once the eccentric had finished speaking, the eyes of the other cultivators brightened, and they rigidly stared at the demon beast egg with fervent gazes. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 537, Information. Each of the other cultivators took out their items, and as expected, they were each noteworthy and proved valuable to core formation cultivators. It was no wonder that this secret market had such a special meeting. Han Li indifferently glanced at the items being presented. Although the items didn't interest him, they greatly provoked the interest of the other cultivators, heating up the atmosphere in the room. When Han Li's turn came, he casually took out a few rare grade 6 and 7 demon beast materials. Of course, this naturally aroused quite some surprise. Soon it became the last cultivator's turn, a dark-skinned, middle-aged man. He was among the 3 mid-core formation cultivators at the table. The others gazed at him with a trace of additional respect. At that moment, the person unhurriedly took out 2 items from his storage pouch and casually placed them onto the table with an unchanged expression. There was a palm-sized, pitch-black copper plate and a half-foot-long piece of gray bone. It appeared to have come from the spine of some animal. The majority of cultivators present blankly stared at the items, unable to make out anything exceptional about them. They all waited for him to give an explanation. But after he took out the items, he astonishingly said, "I will only sell these 2 items to those that recognize them. If you aren't destined for them, do not seek them." He then leaned back against his chair without a care and narrowed his eyes, paying no heed to the beautiful woman close to him, leaving her slightly embarrassed. When the others heard this, they silently looked at each other in dismay. Only Han Li and Yun Xiao revealed a slight change in expression when they gazed at the items. An odd expression flickered across Han Li's face. Although he was somewhat far from the items, when he swept his immense spiritual sense past them, he was able to clearly tell what they were. Although the bone didn't belong to an ordinary demon beast, it simply didn't catch his interest. However, he was somewhat interested in the copper plate, as there were a few bewildering, ancient characters inscribed onto it. The ancient characters were nearly the same as those contained inside the aged hide book of the nameless chi concealment technique. Could it have something to do with it? Even now, Han Li was incapable of completely understanding the ancient book's contents. Just as Han Li inwardly mulled this over, Yun Tianxiao smiled and laughed. After sweeping his gaze over the bones, Yun Tianxiao jokingly said, "Haha, I didn't expect Brother Sun to be so magnanimous as to bring out the spirit bone of a grade 8 demon beast. I am truly tempted." These words startled everyone present and caused an uproar. The item could be considered the most precious one being displayed. The spirit bone of an existence on the level of a grade 8 demon beast was definitely a bizarre treasure seldom seen by core formation cultivators. When Han Li heard this, his heart stirred. Could this person have any information on grade 8 demon beasts? The cultivator surnamed Sun chuckled upon hearing that Yun Tianxia was able to make out the origins of the bone. After deeply glancing at him, he spoke no further. At that point, the trade meeting became a rather fervent event. Everyone wore an expression of unconcealed excitement. The female cultivator companions also gazed at the items on the table with passionate expressions. When Han Li saw this, he unconsciously turned his head to Wen Xiu to find that she also wore a passionate expression. It seemed that these items held an undeniable allure regardless of one's status. At that moment, the fat old man started to list out the conditions by which he would trade his items. The heavenly spirit beads can be exchanged for several stalks of medicine herbs aged 500 years and higher. The demon core requires the tendon of a grade 7 demon beast. Of course, I am also willing to trade them for enough spirit stones. And, seeing that everyone managed to bring out precious treasures, the arrogance of the fat old man had mostly dissolved. When he spoke of the tendon, he unconsciously glanced in Han Li's direction, as Han Li happened to have one on his side of the table. Unfortunately, Han Li had no interest in a grade 6 demon beast core. He merely continued to sit with Wen Xiu in his loose embrace. "I do want that grade 6 demon core, but I don't have any spirit tendons. How many spirit stones do you want for it?" A white-haired old man said with much interest. As fellow Taoist knows, demon beasts are far more difficult to come by than they had been in the past. As such, its price will be higher. I will require 15,000 spirit stones for it. The fat old man appeared unwilling to part with it and responded with an obviously high price. When the white-haired old man heard this, he bitterly smiled and said little else. It was clear the high price had dissuaded him. "I want that demon core," a white-haired old woman expressionlessly said. Soon after she spoke, a storage pouch flew in the direction of the fat old man. The fat old man received the storage pouch and wore a satisfied expression after inspecting it. "Only Lady Qing can be so bold. Us poor cultivators cannot hope to compare." The old man seemed to recognize the woman and tossed the demon beast core over to her with a chuckle. The white-haired old woman coldly snorted and caught the demon beast core. After wordlessly examining it, she placed it into her storage pouch and said nothing further. The other cultivators began to ask about the fat old man's other items, resulting in most of them being traded for. He then put away the remaining items. The following bidding for the red-banded eccentric's darkle worm egg created a huge contest. Because his conditions were quite lax and he also accepted spirit stones, the demon beast egg was open to everyone. In the end, the beast egg was exchanged for several bottles of precious medicine pills by a red-clothed cultivator with an unremarkable appearance. After another 6 people, it was finally Han Li's turn. Han Li looked at the pile of valuable materials in front of him and felt several burning gazes fall onto him. Among them was the fat old man who particularly desired the spirit tendon. Han Li gently smiled. Without standing, he leaned back into his chair with Wen Xiu in his arm and calmly said, "I don't want any items for these materials. I am only willing to exchange them for information. So long as your information is to my satisfaction, I will give all of these materials to you." Information. Han Li's words were cause for surprise. Although they were somewhat shocked, nobody stirred up a fuss. Rather, they all glanced at Han Li with curiosity, calmly waiting to hear what he would say next. Yun Tianxiao's eyes stirred, and suspicion flickered across his face. Han Li leisurely asked, "Might any of you fellow Taoists know the location of a grade 8 demon beast nest? I wish to use these materials to acquire such information." Grade 8 demon beast. Each person took in a breath of alarm with an expression of great shock. Could it be that fellow Taoist is joking? "Do you intend on fighting a grade 8 demon beast?" The fat old man wore an incredulous expression. As Han Li tapped the table, he unhurriedly said, "Of course not. I'm using the information for something else, but I'm not interested in saying what specifically." At the same time, he swept his gaze past the other cultivators without a trace of politeness. They revealed amazement and shock, much to Han Li's disappointment. Han Li's gaze then fell onto the dark-skinned cultivator surnamed Sun. When Cultivator Sun saw Han Li look at him, he was startled but soon came to an understanding. He smiled and asked, "Could it be that fellow Taoist believes that I have information on a grade 8 demon beast? Unfortunately, fellow Taoist Li is mistaken." He then shook his head. Han Li revealed unconcealed disappointment and deeply sighed. But at that moment, Han Li heard a sweet voice say, "I know the location of a grade 8 demon beast, but I don't want the materials. I have a different condition for fellow Taoist Li." Han Li was greatly startled by who had spoken. Han Li incredulously said, "You have information on a grade 8 demon beast." The person who had spoken was the woman in his embrace, Wen Xiyu. Faintly leaning onto Han Li, Wen Xiyu appeared extremely calm as she looked into Han Li's face and said, "That's right. I know the approximate location of a grade 8 demon beast nest." Lady Fan wore a look of amazement, but she soon rebuked Wen Xiyu with a cold expression. "Xiyu, what nonsense are you spouting? How could you have information on a grade 8 demon beast? Don't speak without thinking." While Han Li was in doubt, he suddenly felt the woman draw closer to him. She firmly said, "Marital Aunt Fan, Xiyu truly knows the whereabouts of a grade 8 demon beast. I have no intention of deceiving Senior Li. Please be at ease." If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 538, The Might of New Swords. "You?" Lady Fan frowned and thought to say something when Han Li interrupted her with a serious expression. "Wait, I want to hear what she has to say. I will determine whether or not she is telling the truth." Yun Tianxiao's eyes coldly glinted. After muttering to himself for a moment, he smiled, saying, "Since Martial Niece Wen knows something, let fellow Taoist Li ask." With a moment's pause, Lady Fan reluctantly agreed, "Fine." "Many thanks." Without any further niceties, Han Li nodded his head and expressed his thanks. Han Li's casual mannerisms caused a faint trace of irritation to appear on Yun Tianxiao's face, but it was quickly concealed. At that moment, Han Li stared at Wen Xiyu and asked, "You said you know about the nest of a grade 8 demon beast." Han Li's voice was tranquil, absent of either anger or happiness. This aroused a trace of hesitation in Wen Xiyu, who was only a hair's breadth away, but she soon thought of something terrifying and became resolute. She nodded and gave a sincere recollection. "When I first arrived at the outer star seas, I unintentionally acquired a sea map detailing a certain area. I originally believed it to be the location of hidden treasures and stealthily slipped away to take a look. I ended up discovering a young windbreaker beast. Fortunately, the beast was only at grade 3 and was unable to discover me, so I immediately left the location out of fear. Senior should know that windbreaker beasts only give birth once they reach grade 8, and they won't leave their offspring until they reach about grade 5. As such, it is certain that there is a grade 8 demon beast lurking nearby. If Senior is willing to agree to my conditions, I am willing to lead the way." Han Li's expression changed, and he revealed a trace of excitement. A fully grown windbreaker beast was a genuine grade 8 demon beast. If this woman spoke the truth, the nest was certain to have the demon echo grass he required. Han Li stared at the woman for a long while before letting out a long breath. With a deep voice, he asked, "What does fellow Taoist desire for the information on the demon beast nest?" Wen Xiyu blushed for a moment before unhesitantly saying, "I wish for Senior to take this young woman away from here and take her as your concubine." "What?" Han Li paused for a moment with an expression of surprise on his face. "Xiyu, what nonsense are you saying?" When Lady Fan heard her, she was unable to stay sitting as furious surprise appeared on her face. The other cultivators also appeared shocked, but soon after, a majority of the cultivators revealed entertained expressions. A few of them even bantered and couldn't help but chuckle. When Yun Tianxiao heard this, his expression grew sullen and his complexion became ashen. Yun Tianxiao slapped his palms against the table and stared at his hands. With a cold voice, he expressionlessly said, "I didn't clearly hear what you wanted from fellow Taoist Li. Let me hear that again." When Siyu's body trembled several times while in Han Li's embrace, and her face became bloodlessly pale. But when her bright eyes fell onto Han Li's calm expression, she regained a trace of courage, and she shouted with all the strength in her body, I want Senior Li to take me as his concubine and take me away from the exquisite sound sect. Afterwards, she lowered her head, no longer daring to look up. Puff, Yun Tianxiao's hands were instantly covered in gray flames that were half a foot high. The flames were wild and untamed. Strange gray light shone onto his face, making for a frightening sight. Hollow bone yin flames, someone uttered. Suddenly, the original laughter and smiles in the room had disappeared, all replaced with solemn expressions. Fellow Taoist Li, it seems that girl's cultivation has gone awry and her mind became addled. I hope fellow Taoist doesn't take her drivel to heart. Servants, restrict Wen Siyu's magic power and place her in seclusion for half a month. Yun Tianxiao coldly ordered without the slightest emotion. Just as those orders were spoken, two azure-robed, late Foundation establishment cultivators walked in and headed straight towards Han Li. With an ashen complexion, Wen Siyu looked into Han Li's eyes with a pleading expression and a delicate, heart-wrenching gaze. Han Li couldn't help but frown. Wait. Without waiting for Yun Tianxiao to speak, Lady Fan perturbedly said, "What? Does fellow Taoist Li plan on taking in the woman?" Without faltering, Han Li indifferently said, "Perhaps. However, I rather want to know the information on the demon beast. I hope Brother Yun and Madam won't be impatient. How about you wait until after hearing my response?" When Yun Tianxiao heard this, his expression fluctuated as he muttered to himself for a short moment. He then waved his hands and extinguished the flames. As Yun Tianxiao emotionlessly stared at Han Li, he uttered, "Servant, step down. I will listen to what he has to say." He decided to give Han Li face as he was a fellow core formation cultivator. After all, there would soon be a great event where he would require the power of all the core formation cultivators present. Thus, he was unwilling to casually offend anybody. Fellow Taoist Wen took the initiative to willingly become my concubine, but I don't care about that in the slightest. However, I am quite determined to win over her information on the demon beast. Wouldn't it be better if I were to exchange these materials for this woman's freedom? What do you think, Brother Yun? Han Li pushed out the pile of precious materials towards Yun Tianxiao and unblinkingly gazed at him with a mysterious smile. "You will use these to exchange for her." Yun Tianxiao spoke with an ice-cold tone, but his eyes revealed a trace of confusion. The pile before him contained precious materials from grade 6 and 7 demon beasts. It was worth several tens of thousands of spirit stones at the very least, and he was more than willing to accept it in exchange for a Foundation establishment cultivator. Even if the woman was an enchanting beauty, it was quite an astonishing affair. Could it be that the information of a grade 8 demon beast was that important to him? Should he use this opportunity to settle the situation, or should he use force to further pressure him? After some further thought, Yun Tianxiao quickly came to a conclusion, and his expression relaxed. Just as he thought to say something, Lady Fan leaned her seductive body against him and whispered something into his ear. In an instant, Yun Tianxiao's expression changed to reveal hesitation. After a moment of silence, he righteously said, "Fellow Taoist Li, I cannot let you take this girl away, no matter how much you pay. Otherwise, it would set a precedent that will allow the sect's female cultivators to be easily taken away by anyone who fancies them. This would greatly tarnish our reputation." These words startled the other cultivators and caused them to look at each other. It was reasonable to say that the pile of precious materials was worth far more than a Foundation establishment woman, no matter how beautiful she may be. Hence, there was definitely something amiss with Yun Tianxiao's rejection. With Han Li's unwillingness to release the woman, the others watched the scene with a sneer. They felt the following exchange would prove to be quite entertaining. Exquisite sound sect. Han Li pursed his lips and a strange expression flickered through his eyes. What? Fellow Taoist Li doesn't know that this secret room was opened by the sect. I happen to be an elder of the Exquisite Sound Sect. I'm assisting Sect Elder Fan in managing it, Yun Tianxiao coldly said. His face was faintly covered in a layer of strange gray qi, undoubtedly in a display of superior might. Yun Tianxiao's display was but a minor effort at intimidation. Since he is only an early core formation cultivator and he is currently in my territory, he will have to submit after thinking about what there is to gain and lose. It is only a pity about those materials. Yun Tianxiao thought with slight regret. There wasn't a trace of worry in his mind. But at that moment, Han Li suddenly sneered and uttered, "Fine." Much like Yun Tianxiao, Han Li raised his hand, summoning a white light that abruptly flashed before him. Yun Tianxiao was greatly startled and unconsciously circulated his cultivation art, enveloping his body in countless gray flames. At that moment, the white light ruthlessly struck the flames. It underwent a series of blurs and suddenly revealed 12-inch-long swords that all bore into the flames. Xianxia was stricken with terror and hastily unleashed his magic treasure. However, the flames weren't able to block the 12 flying swords for even an instant. The flames faded away as a dozen bloody holes appeared on Xianxia's body. By the time Xianxia had released his small gray pitchfork, he had already fallen to the ground with a miserable scream. When the other cultivators saw this, they became dumbstruck and their mouths were gaping open. They were unable to recollect themselves for quite some time. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 539, Provoking All. Han Li indifferently waved his hand, and the 12 small swords converged back into one. It then disappeared into his sleeve with a flash of white light. Han Li lowered his hand and wore a tranquil expression, saying, "Now let's have a chat." Having been struck down just a moment ago without the slightest resistance or contest, Xianxia had lost the will to fight. After a short moment, Xianxia managed to stand up with his blood-covered body. He glanced at Han Li with a gaze full of fright. With a pale face, Xianxia said, "Well, since I cannot stop you, feel free to take Wen-Xiu away. However, let's get the unpleasant matters out of the way first. She already caught the eye of a senior and was being prepared as a cultivation vessel. After you take her away, don't be afraid of any calamities you attract." Soon after, he took out several talismans and slapped them onto his body. With flashes of green light, his wounds healed at a visible rate. Cultivation vessel. Han Li suddenly realized why Wen-Xiu desired to depart. However, Han Li's expression suddenly grew cold from the implicit meaning of Xianxia's words. Han Li said with an unchanged expression, "There is someone else that fancies her. That's no problem. I'll take her anyways, though it would be better if fellow Taoist kept his threats to a minimum. Otherwise, blood will be shed if my mood takes a turn for the worse." He then casually swept his gaze across the room. Han Li's threats weren't entirely plausible. If it weren't for the fact that so many core formation cultivators were present, Han Li would have clearly killed the lot of them to tie up all the loose ends. However, he wasn't completely confident in being able to kill them all. As such, he could only use his heavy words to intimidate those that were present. If his previous attack had left the others bewildered, then his current tone had aroused suspicion that Han Li was a nascent soul cultivator. The cultivators present became anxious, and they quickly lowered their heads. None dared to meet Han Li's gaze. Xianxia naturally also thought of this possibility. He appeared to be an early core formation cultivator, but had nearly taken his life with a single strike. Additionally, he wanted to find the nest of a grade 8 demon beast. When he made the connection, he suddenly began to inwardly curse without end. Wen-Xiu, still in Han Li's embrace, suddenly widened her beautiful eyes and her body jolted straight. She would rather die than become someone else's cultivation vessel. As a result, she had decided to risk her life in that previous display. However, she completely hadn't expected this cultivator surnamed Li to possess such a frightening cultivation. He was able to suppress all the cultivators present by himself, and in a single terrifying move, he gravely injured Xianxia and left Lady Fan with a face full of terror. This was all such a delightful surprise. It felt like something that would come out of a dream. Han Li glanced at the others, careful and meek mannerisms, and coldly smiled. He then raised his hand and summoned the dark-skinned cultivator's copper plate to his hand. Han Li began to examine it without a trace of politeness. The dark-skinned cultivator's expression faintly changed. However, his mouth trembled several times, only to remain silent. He didn't dare to say any words of dissatisfaction. Since Han Li was able to nearly deal Xianxia a killing blow in a single strike, he naturally knew that he didn't pose a chance and turned his expression away. Han Li put down the copper plate and indifferently spoke to its owner. "I want this item. How many spirit stones for it?" The dark-skinned cultivator was slightly surprised and instinctively responded, 7. No, 5,000 spirit stones. Han Li then took out a grade 5 demon core and promptly dropped it in front of the other person. "I'll use the demon core to trade for it." Han Li then turned to Lady Fan and said, "Moreover, don't say that I robbed you of this woman. The materials on the table can be considered payment for her." Han Li patted the shoulder of Wen-Xiu and let go of her. He then stood up and unhurriedly walked towards the exit. Wen-Xiu finally woke up a short moment later, and hurried after him in a somewhat flustered manner. Lady Fan's expression stirred and she suddenly yelled, "Senior Li, please slow down." Han Li halted his steps, and he turned around with an odd expression on his face. Han Li found it quite interesting that the woman was actually courageous enough to call out to him. Wen Xiyu grew nervous at this and unconsciously drew closer to Han Li. Han Li narrowed his eyes and indifferently asked, "What is it?" "Does Senior wish to return to the inner star seas? Our exquisite sound sect will have a method of returning everyone to the inner star seas in the near future." Lady Fan sweetly smiled, speaking with an obviously respectful tone. As it was very likely that she was speaking to a nascent soul cultivator, she didn't dare to be negligent. Han Li frowned and asked, "What do you mean by that?" He wasn't interested in hearing elusive words. Seeing that Han Li was still patient, she didn't dare to put up any pretenses and hastily said, "Our exquisite sound sect is currently preparing a transportation formation to return to the inner star seas. We are currently lacking a few crucial materials. As the formation cannot be completed without them, we hosted this trade meeting in the hopes of acquiring everyone's assistance. So long as you assist in the creation of the transportation formation, our exquisite sound sect will send you back to the inner star seas free of charge." Lady Fan's words caused the other core formation cultivators to become restless. A majority of them revealed pleasant surprise. The outer star seas had already become the dominion of demon beasts. They couldn't stay here for much longer. As such, they had naturally thought of returning. However, there were no transportation formations, and it would take more than 600 years to return at the speed of their flight, not to mention the many dangers they would encounter along the way. They remained here only out of an inability to leave. The white-haired old woman's expression stirred and she coldly asked, "Even with the transportation formation, won't we need displacement talismans? Don't tell us that the exquisite sound sect has already grasped how to refine them." "Senior, please don't be worried. Although our exquisite sound sect cannot refine these talismans, we acquired quite a few of them before the beast torrent. We currently have more than enough to send everyone back to the scattered star seas. The most important material for the formation is phantasm stone. It is truly rare. Although we found a deposit of this stone during our search for it over these past few years, it happens to be located near the resting area of a group of high-grade demon beasts. A majority of them are at grade 5 and 6 and they are great in number. It isn't something that can be done with a small number of cultivators. Moreover, if any of them are allowed to escape, they will alert higher-grade demon beasts, resulting in disaster. Thus, our sect requires everyone's strength." Lady Fan spoke with a righteous expression. After hearing this, the others wore a pensive expression. Cleanly exterminating a group of demon beasts wasn't something that could be easily agreed to. They had to carefully think about it. The dark-skinned cultivator muttered to himself for a moment before slowly asking, "Why didn't you ask a nascent soul cultivator for assistance instead of core formation cultivators? The certainty of success would have been higher." "You fellow Taoists think that I didn't try. However, most of those venerable seniors had completely vanished after the beast torrent. I was only able to get into contact with Senior Swift Crane. With that person joining us, we would have been able to deal with the grade 7 demon beasts. He was the one who fancied Xiyu to be his cultivation vessel." Lady Fan bitterly smiled and glanced in Han Li's direction. When the other cultivators heard this, they looked at each other in dismay. When Han Li heard this, he rubbed his chin and muttered to himself for a moment. He then promptly said, "I have no interest in this endeavor. Deal with it yourselves." With that said, he ignored them and headed out. Wen Xiyu didn't dare to fall behind and quickly followed after him. Nobody dared to block Han Li. They could only gaze after him as he left. Lady Fan wore an expression of unconcealed disappointment. As for Xianxia, he finally began to speak once more. "Since fellow Taoist Li is unwilling to assist us, we won't force any of you either. We will now introduce some information on the demon beasts nearby the phantasm stone. Please come to your own decisions after the details have been explained." Here, as if he hadn't been heavily injured, Xianxia began to ceaselessly speak. "Senior, do you truly not wish to return to the inner star seas?" Wen Xiyu muttered from behind Han Li. Without turning his head around, Han Li aloofly replied, "Why do you want to return?" "I also don't wish to, it's just." Wen Xiyu's voice grew soft until she ceased speaking. At that moment, Han Li had already brought her past the stone wall. Since his objective had already been accomplished, he naturally had no interest in staying here any longer. Han Li brought Wen Xiyu outside of the concealed city, much to the astonishment of the old gatekeeper. He then wrapped the woman in his light and took off into the skies. Wen Xiu was silent as they flew and didn't ask him any questions about their destination. It seemed she was leaving everything entirely up to Han Li. Han Li also hadn't thought to give her any further explanation and continued to fly in stifled silence. 2 days later, Han Li eventually found a desolate island with meager spiritual qi and descended. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 540, Concubine. The island had several mountains that rose above 300 meters and were lush with verdant forestry and filled with many trees. Han Li circled around the mountains before descending onto one of them with Wen Xiu in tow. Under the woman's astonished gaze, Han Li released his flying swords and carved a small cave residence into the mountain after a few hours. Although the cave residence was less than half the size of his cave residence in the Misty Island and was far more crude, it still had a bedroom and seclusion room, along with a tool refinement room, medicinal garden, and so on. Han Li appeared quite satisfied and placed down several formation spells around it before bringing Wen Xiu inside. Han Li brought Wen Xiu into the bedroom and sat on a hurriedly carved stone chair. After examining the woman, he leisurely said, "You will be living here from now on. I will tell you the incantations for the spell formations. This place is quite secluded. If you diligently cultivate, there is a chance you'll enter core formation." "Many thanks, Senior Li." Wen Xiu blushed underneath Han Li's gaze, appearing to be at a complete loss about what to do. Han Li smiled. "Senior Li." Wen Xiu hastily hung her pretty head and hesitantly said, "Sorry, should I call you?" Having just become his concubine, she didn't know how she should address him. Han Li rubbed his nose and indifferently said, "You can call me Mr. Li." Han Li had yet to reveal his true appearance. He had still assumed the form of a middle-aged man. After a moment of hesitation, Wen Xiu obediently replied, "Yes, Mr. Li." Han Li nodded his head with satisfaction and thought about what he should say. He then softly asked, "When did fellow Taoist Wen arrive at the scattered star seas, and how did Lady Fan become the Exquisite Sound Sect's sect leader? According to my knowledge, Fairy Violet Spirit should have been the sect leader." Mr. Li seems quite knowledgeable of the sect's past. Wen Xiu was quite amazed that Han Li had made inquiries about the Exquisite Sound Sect instead of hurriedly asking about the demon beast nest. But after some thought, she opened her almond lips and explained, "The Exquisite Sound Sect was entirely managed by the young sect master before we teleported to the outer star seas. But while she was out at Heaven Void Hall, a startling change occurred when we returned to the sect. The envoy of the left disappeared without a trace, and all of the power in the sect fell into the hands of an outsider, and the envoy of the right, Lady Fan. I later discovered that this cultivator was a Devil Dao cultivator, and that the Exquisite Sound Sect had already become a vassal of the Devil Dao. In order to establish herself as sect master, Lady Fan immediately gathered together a large number of disciples and sent us through Heavenly Star City's transportation formation. At the time, I had been coerced into traveling along. Since then, our sect has handled this hidden city. The disloyal female disciples have been mysteriously disappearing over the past few years, and those that have been given away were never seen again. Were it not for Mr. Li saving my life earlier, I fear I would have become a cultivation vessel," Wen Xiu dimly said. Han Li's expression stirred. Hiding his intentions, he asked, "What did your sect master Fan do in the outer star seas? It can't be that she only managed the hidden city." "I'm not too sure about this. However, Lady Fan and that Devil Dao cultivator surnamed Yun were gathering all sorts of information with the assistance of the hidden city as if they were looking for something." Wen Xiu spoke with uncertainty, and an expression of doubt appeared on her face. When Han Li heard this, he ceased asking questions and started to mull over what she had said. It seemed a violent usurpation had occurred while he and Fairy Violet Spirit were trapped in Heaven Void Hall. With the successful usurpation of power, Lady Fan immediately brought large quantities of disciples to Wondrous Depths Island. Afterwards, the Starfolk Coalition had launched an attack on Heavenly Star City. It seemed that regardless of how the Devil Dao took over the Exquisite Sound Sect, it was clear that the influence of the Starfolk Coalition was immense. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to take over the sect at such an opportune time. By the time Fairy Violet Spirit returned from Heaven Void Hall, she would have discovered that her sect was gone. As for the Devil Dao powers, They were drawing support from the exquisite sound sect to find someone or something in the outer star seas. This was yet another mysterious aspect that had nothing to do with Han Li. Hence, he was disinclined to further ask about it. Furthermore, he had already become irreconcilable enemies with Taoist master Swift Crane, and it seemed the current exquisite sound sect had a relationship with him. As such, Han Li was even more unwilling to be tied down by them, and had refused Lady Fan's proposal. As for returning to the inner star seas, Han Li wasn't even considering the matter until after he broke through his bottleneck. While it was true that demon beasts were running amok in this land, with the greatly desired heaven-void cauldron in his hands, the inner star seas might not necessarily be safer. Han Li repeatedly mulled over Wen Siyu's words in his mind after a short moment. He found nothing that sounded incorrect. To the best of his knowledge, she was telling the truth. It was only natural for Han Li to be this careful, as he possessed the famed heaven-void cauldron. Who knows how many nascent soul eccentrics wanted to lay their hands on it? Even since ancient times, countless men had suffered from the wily tricks of beautiful women. Han Li didn't wish to become one of them out of a moment of carelessness. But of course, the odds of this woman attempting to deceive him were next to nothing. He had suddenly appeared before her as a person that nobody recognized and brought her to an unknown place. He was also under the effect of a secret technique that even early nascent soul cultivators couldn't see through. At that moment, Wen Siyu saw Han Li's expression fluctuate, and she unconsciously revealed a trace of restlessness. Having finally collected his thoughts, Han Li noticed the beautiful woman's peculiarity. He faintly smiled and said, "I've already brought you away from the hidden city, and I've even arranged this location for you. How about you tell me about the location of the demon beast nest? After you tell me, I'll immediately head off and you'll never see me again." When Siyu blankly stared for a moment before revealing surprise, "Senior doesn't intend on taking me in as a concubine." Han Li calmly said, "I'm used to traveling alone. I don't need anybody following after me." After a moment of silence, her beautiful face wore a complicated expression and she gently shook her head. After a strange emotion flickered within her eyes, she serenely said, "Many thanks for Mr. Li's kindness, but since I've already decided to become your concubine, I don't have any thoughts of reneging on it. Senior, please be at ease. Siyu will keep her promise without complaint." Han Li clearly understood the woman's apprehension, and he couldn't help but mysterious smile, saying, "I don't know what fellow Taoist Wen intends, but my words hold firm. If fellow Taoist truly wishes to settle the matter and become my wife, I won't further decline. When that happens, fellow Taoist Wen had better not regret it." He was certain that Wen Siyu didn't want to become anybody's concubine. The conditions raised in the hidden city were most likely raised out of helplessness. Although being a concubine was far better than being a cultivation vessel, there weren't any foundation establishment woman that would be willing to become someone else's concubine. This only happened in desperate circumstances or under coercion. Although Han Li felt quite tempted by Wen Siyu's exceptional beauty, he clearly understood that he was at a crucial point in his cultivation. He couldn't afford to keep a foundation establishment woman by his side. It would be far better to let her go free and drop the subject. Doubts began to surface after Han Li explained his words. Hesitation appeared on her face. A trace of amusement appeared within his eyes. Han Li softly said, "What? Don't tell me that fellow Taoist still wishes to become my concubine." "No," Wen Siyu's hurriedly refused, and after a moment's pause, she bit her lip and saluted Han Li, saying, I must give many thanks to Mr. Li. Junior Wen Siyu will never forget your kindness." Her expression was filled with anxious fright. "Since that is the case, let's drop the matter of being a concubine. There is no need for fellow Taoist Wen to take it seriously." Han Li had no intentions of deliberately making this difficult. "Many thanks, Mr. Li." Wen Siyu was joyfully surprised. Her expression relaxed and her flowery beauty blossomed, producing an emotionally stirring scene. Upon seeing this, Han Li felt a ripple of emotion, but he quickly buried this emotion at the bottom of his heart. After calming himself, Han Li serenely asked, "Fellow Taoist Wen, how about telling me about the windbreaker beast?" When Siyu's smile disappeared, she said with a worried tone, "Mr. Li, the windbreaker beast's nest is somewhat dangerous. It is near the edge of the depths. Please clearly consider it for a moment before heading out to the nest." The edge of the depths, Han Li frowned. It seemed this would prove quite troublesome. The current depths were beyond dangerous. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 541, 6 Arms and 3 Heads. After asking a few more questions about the Windbreaker's nest, Han Li casually handed a bottle of medicine pills over to Wen Xiu. Wen Xiu was immediately grateful and promptly entered seclusion to refine their medicinal power. Han Li then sealed himself off inside of another room and began studying the copper plate. He carefully examined the item as he sat down cross-legged. Only one side of the copper plate was inscribed with characters, the other was engraved with a bizarre depiction of a rather formidable-looking monster. The monster had 3 heads with vicious eyes along with 6 arms raised towards the sky. It was unclear what it was supposed to be doing. After looking at it for a moment with a frown, Han Li took out the old hide book with the nameless incantation and compared the characters that were inscribed. He discovered that the characters were largely the same except for minute differences. It seemed they shared an origin, but were written in distinctly different styles of writing. Since he couldn't find anything hidden on the surface, Han Li inserted his magic power into the copper plate without any hesitation. Soon after it started to absorb his magic power, the copper plate let out a clear hum and started to tremble. It then brilliantly flourished with white light, and beams of dense yellow light began to shoot out from the sides of the copper plate, projecting a picture onto the wall. Han Li was delighted by the developments and became mesmerized by what he saw. The image depicted a human-formed demon beast, covered with scales and with a single horn on its head. It appeared exactly the same as the 3-headed, 6-armed demon beast on the back of the plate, but with only one head. Just as Han Li was puzzled by this, the picture changed with a flash of light. It now depicted the demon beast sitting down cross-legged with its hands clutched in a strange hand gesture. Its entire body was contorted in a baffling position, leaving Han Li puzzled. A short moment later, the image changed again, revealing that the demon beast had changed its hand incantation, and its body contorted once more, assuming another strange posture. The images periodically shifted to reveal indescribable changes in hand gestures and posture, as if it were cultivating some sort of technique. An hour later, the copper plate's light dimmed and the images disappeared. Han Li had counted 36 different positions that the demon beast assumed. He rubbed his nose and looked at the item in his hand with an odd expression. Although he didn't know what the characters on the copper plate had meant, he was able to tell from the pictures that this item wasn't something for human cultivators. It clearly recorded a demon cultivation art. Prior to this, he hadn't known that demon beasts even cultivated. Weren't demon beasts innately capable of absorbing spiritual qi? Why would they cultivate? It seemed that cultivation arts should quite important to demon beasts that were capable of taking human form. However, Han Li looked at the copper plate in his hands without knowing whether he should laugh or cry. Even if he could understand the words on it, would he dare to cultivate a demon cultivation art? Besides, he currently had no shortage of high-grade techniques. The complete collection of profound yin arts was still snugly placed inside his storage pouch. With that thought, it was no wonder the dark-skinned cultivator had deliberately mystified the item during the trade meeting. It was completely useless. Han Li felt like a fool and grew gloomy. Since the inscription on the copper plate was a cultivation art specifically for demons, he wouldn't be able to decipher them no matter how many human jade slips he looked through. It seemed the contents of the old hide book were the same. Han Li let out a long breath and placed the 2 items into his storage pouch with a wretched expression before leaving the stone room. Han Li felt somewhat disappointed after having his expectations dashed. However, his mood quickly adjusted as he made preparations to head to the wondrous depths. Acquiring the high-grade demon echo grass was currently his top priority. It was directly able to help him reach an entirely higher level on his path to immortality. After he consumed the rainbow beads, he could feel his cultivation aptitude continue to change for the better over the years. Although he couldn't compare to those with heavenly spiritual roots or other outstanding geniuses, he was now able to absorb and refine spiritual qi at the level of cultivators with 3-element spiritual roots. The Heaven Men pill truly deserved its reputation. Han Li's chance at condensing a nascent soul was now a sliver higher. When Han Li left the room, when Xiu was still in seclusion, he reckoned that she would need another 3 months in order to refine all of the medicine. Han Li didn't bother her. After some further thought, he left behind several magic tools along with the control incantations for the cave residence's spell formations before departing from the island. Han Li looked around while in the sky and determined his direction before flying off towards the wondrous depths. Along the way, Han Li came across several demon beasts and ruthlessly exterminated them. As for any humans he saw, he ignored them and continued on his way. Han Li eventually arrived at the vicinity of the wondrous depths after traveling for a month. At that time, he started to conceal his aura and began to hide his tracks. As these seas are under the dominion of higher-grade demon beasts, Han Li naturally had to be extremely careful. He didn't dare to rely on his luck. As expected, Han Li came across many demon beasts along the way, but with his remarkable concealment techniques, he was able to avoid their attention. Several days later, Han Li stopped in the air and stared at a small island in the distance with a solemn expression. The island was the Grade 8 demon beast nest that Wen Xiu had spoken of. Han Li didn't dare to boldly rush into it. If the ancient windbreaker beast was present on the island, he would be certain to die. For this same reason, he only swept his eyes over the island, not daring to release his spiritual sense. Han Li spotted a reef emerging from the ocean far from the island and placed a small formation on it. He then sat on it and quietly meditated as he kept watch on the island. He wouldn't easily take action until he could predict the Grade 8 demon beast's movements. Unfortunately, the rainbow skirt grass had no effect on demon beasts that were Grade 8 and higher. Otherwise, he would have already used the grass to lure the ancient windbreaker beast away, instead of choosing to bitterly stand watch here. Day after day passed with Han Li gazing at the island from the reef. Several months eventually went by without Han Li spotting any signs of demon beast movements. He eventually grew dreary from the waiting. Could it be that the developing demon beast isn't on the island right now, and the windbreaker beast abandoned its nest? Han Li suspiciously thought. Yet another month passed with no developments. Helpless, Han Li finally came to the decision to enter the island and investigate. He wasn't about to waste several years on the reef. Early in the morning of the next day, just as sunlight began to illuminate the sky, Han Li restrained all of the spiritual qi in his body and stealthily flew onto the island. He had already observed the small island for several months and knew its terrain like the back of his hand. He flew halfway up the mountain and spotted a few boulders concealing a pitch-black cave, just as Wen Xiu had described. Han Li narrowed his eyes. After placing several auxiliary magic techniques on his body and releasing his disguise, his body disappeared without a trace. Han Li then carefully entered the cave and slowly released his spiritual sense, occasionally probing his surroundings. The cave was exceptionally deep, and the deeper he went, the more damp it became. After the time it took to finish a cup of tea, Han Li stopped at a corner with a nervous expression on his face. Han Li slowly closed his eyes and scouted forward with his spiritual sense. Shortly after, an odd expression appeared on his face. Han Li then gritted his teeth and hesitantly turned the corner. Light suddenly shined before him to reveal a huge natural cavern. It was at least 300 meters wide and over 30 meters tall. The walls and the ceiling flickered with green light, and it had a dark blue pool of water at the center that appeared to be piping hot. There was strange vegetation growing around the pool. When Han Li's gaze fell onto the vegetation, he spotted several stalks of something short and jet black. Excitement flickered within his eyes. The stalks were the demon echo grass that he was looking for. Demon echo grass would only turn black when growing near Grade 8 demon beasts. It was gray when growing near lower grades. As Han Li gazed at the pond at the center, delight momentarily appeared on his face before it was soon replaced with solemnness. If the windbreaker beast was in the cave, it would most likely be inside of the pool. Although he had swept over the pool with his spiritual sense, the pool was extremely deep. He had only inspected a small portion of it. Han Li licked his lips and steeled his heart. His body blurred before reappearing at the side of the pool. He gently clapped his storage pouch and took out a jade box. He then quickly reached toward the ground with his free hand. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 542, Grade 9 Demon Cultivator. He quickly harvested the demon echo grass and placed it into the jade box, dirt and all. Click. Han Li smoothly closed the lid of the jade box with a trace of joy. It was beyond his expectations how simple it had been to acquire the demon echo grass. However, he couldn't stay there any longer. Han Li immediately turned around and was about to set off when he heard a calm voice from behind him. You stayed nearby for so long just to get those plants. Human cultivators are truly baffling. These words were spoken by a strange male voice. Han Li's expression greatly changed, and his face became extremely unsightly. He soon forced himself to calm down and turned around in a blur. He caught sight of an azure-robed figure that was looking at him with obvious curiosity. Upon clearly seeing the figure's appearance, Han Li grimaced. The demon cultivator had a silver scarf around the top of his head, azure robes on his body, and rough shoes on his feet. Apart from his sharp, pointy nose and narrow green eyes, all other aspects were indistinguishable from a human. Han Li frantically examined the man several times. With this demon-based, nearly perfect human form, could it be a legendary grade 9 or 10 demon beast? Han Li's body grew rigid, and his hands had already fastened on his 5 element bands and his spirit beast pouch. However, he didn't dare to attack. Your esteemed self watched me for quite some time. Han Li could hear that his voice had become unpleasantly hoarse. When the demon cultivator heard this, his expression stirred. He then smiled, revealing his pure white teeth and narrowing his eyes, saying, "That's right, I knew you were there from the day you arrived. I merely thought you were a human cultivator passing by and hadn't paid you any attention. But who would have thought that before the day passed, you would sit on the coral reef nearby? I, Feng, have grown quite curious indeed." Not knowing whether or not it was a trick of the mind, Han Li felt that the man's teeth were somewhat sharp and faintly glinted with a chilling light. Han Li's heart dropped even further as he thought, his surname is Feng. Then he must be the fully grown Windbreaker Beast one. The surname Feng Chinese letter, that the demon cultivator uses the same Wind Chinese letter in Windbreaker Beast. Han Li forced a smile and asked, "Since that was the case, why didn't you attack me?" The Windbreaker Beast weirdly smiled and said, "I actually wished to come see you sooner, but I've only recently reached the second stage of my metamorphosis. While stabilizing it, it was difficult for me to go outside. As it just so happened, I actually finished stabilizing my form just now and was going to leave, but I hadn't expected that fellow Taoist would run into my lair of your own accord. That was quite surprising." Second stage metamorphosis. Could it be that you have entered grade 9? Han Li's face grew pale, and his hands had unknowingly become lined with cold sweat. The fully matured Windbreaker demon cultivator blinked and casually replied, "Grade 9. That's just how you humans differentiate us demons. Regardless, I reached the second grade of the metamorphosis stage, which would be the equivalent of what you call grade 9 demon beasts." Han Li grew silent when he heard the demon's calm recognition. After a short moment, the corner of his mouth twitched into a bitter smile. Were it a grade 8 demon beast, he figured he would still have a chance at escape. But in the face of a grade 9 demon cultivator, he had no hopes of breaking free. It seemed his death would be the result of something entirely unavoidable. With that thought, Han Li said nothing further and suddenly opened his mouth, spitting out over 10 streaks of azure light that circled around him. He then raised his hand, intending on opening his spirit beast pouches. But in that instant, the demon cultivator moved. He blurred before Han Li's eyes and snatched the spirit beast bag out of his hand. Although the many flying swords protecting Han Li had moved to block the demon cultivator, he was far too quick. He had returned to his original spot before the swords could strike him. After a moment of overwhelming astonishment, Han Li's face turned ashen. How could he have forgotten that the Windbreaker Beast was originally known for its amazing speed? Their speed as a grade 9 demon beast was nearly identical to teleportation at such a short distance. There was no chance of even injuring him. In that instant, a chaotic torrent of thoughts began to surge through his mind. Han Li's ashen complexion underwent yet another change as he slapped his storage pouch and took out a ball of radiant golden threads. Han Li quickly grabbed onto the ball and swallowed it. Afterwards, he wordlessly gazed at the azure-robed demon cultivator. He had already decided that when he faced death's door, he would ignite the celestial ice pearl with his divine devil-bane lightning. This way, even if mutual destruction wasn't accomplished, the opponent would still suffer a heavy injury. The demon cultivator revealed astonishment upon seeing Han Li's baffling actions, but he soon nonchalantly smiled. "He. There is no need for fellow Taoists to be so anxious. I hold no malicious intentions towards you." He casually tossed the spirit beast pouch up and down in his hand as he spoke. Han Li frowned and coldly said, "What do you mean? Aren't you demon beasts currently exterminating human cultivators?" He didn't wish to be played around with before he died. The corner of the demon cultivator's mouth twitched and he shook his head, saying, "The demon beasts that have been killing you off are only the nearby sea races. I have nothing to do with them. I'm merely staying here for the time being because I enjoy the geyser pool here." Han Li was stunned. He suddenly recalled that windbreaker beasts were demon beasts that lay somewhere between demon birds and sea beasts. As such, they couldn't truly be considered demon beasts of the sea. Furthermore, from his tone, it seemed as though he wasn't even originally from around here. Could it be he truly doesn't wish to kill me? Han Li's expression wavered for a moment. After a short moment, he retrieved his flying swords into his body with a wave of his hand, and his expression relaxed. Since his flying swords weren't able to deal with the demon cultivator either way, he may as well play along. If worst comes to worst, he would just detonate the celestial ice pearl. The demon cultivator wore a satisfied expression after seeing Han Li put away his magic treasures. "I do enjoy talking with sensible humans. I'll return this to you first." He didn't view the spirit beast pouch as a threat and threw it back to Han Li. Han Li caught it and felt somewhat more at ease. The demon cultivator stared at Han Li and said, "Does fellow Taoist have any interest in paying a visit to my true cave residence? This would be the first time I've ever invited a human cultivator." Although the demon cultivator's tone was polite, how could Han Li possibly refuse? He had no option but to nod with a forced smile. The demon cultivator appeared happy when Han Li agreed. He wordlessly raised his hand, and a blue ball of light appeared within it. The light then grew several times larger and enveloped Han Li. Shock appeared on Han Li's face, but he didn't resist. With a flash of blue light, the demon cultivator began dragging him within the bubble of light that enveloped him. Then, both of them dropped into the pool with a splash. Because of the faint blue light that was emitted from the bubble around him, Han Li was able to clearly see the world underneath the water. Perhaps it was due to the strange water in the pool, but there were no other animals apart from some strange palm-sized white fish. There was also no sea vegetation. The demon cultivator saw that Han Li was completely captivated by the underwater scene, and just smiled. After the time it took to finish a meal, the bubble came to a stop and trembled for a moment before shooting off to the side. In the blink of an eye, Han Li spotted a huge black stone gate in front of him. The gate flickered with white light as if it was covered by a restriction. The demon cultivator pointed at the stone door and politely said, "We've arrived. Welcome to my humble home. I hope fellow Taoist doesn't find it too funny." Han Li forced a smile but remained silent. As soon as the bubble touched the stone gate opened to reveal a layer of white light. After they passed through it, they entered a completely dry passageway. The bubble surrounding Han Li then disappeared. The stone walls were embedded with all sorts of small pearls that reflected light, filling the passageway with dazzling light reminiscent of daylight. These weren't ordinary pearls. They were pearls that are only found at the ocean's deepest depths within spirit oysters, and the like that were over 1,000 years old. They had the strange effect of repelling both water and fire. "Please come in, fellow Taoist." The demon cultivator couldn't help but feel proud upon seeing Han Li's astonishment. Han Li gazed down the passageway with complete unwillingness in his heart, but with a grade 9 demon beast staring at him, he could only force himself to head in first. The azure-robed demon cultivator leisurely followed after him. The passageway couldn't be considered large, and Han Li soon found himself in a gorgeous hall decorated with all kinds of coral. At the center of the hall, there was a sparkling white jade table with several chairs made from the same beautiful jade. The corners of the hall each had a small, elegant pot with a finger-thick joss stick burning within. It filled the hall with a faint fragrance. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 543, Jade for Wine. "Fellow Taoist, please sit." The demon cultivator boldly took a seat and beckoned to Han Li. Han Li took a seat across from the demon cultivator and remained silent. The demon cultivator narrowed his eyes and gently said, "It seems I've embarrassed myself. I still haven't asked for your esteemed name. My name is Fengzai." After a moment of hesitation, Han Li slowly said, "My surname is Li." So it's fellow Taoist Li. You must feel somewhat confused. In truth, if any other cultivator had appeared before me, I would have definitely slain them despite not being from the local sea race. Peaceful coexistence between humans and demons is certainly impossible. Hanli felt his heart tremble and forced a smile, asking, in that case, does Senior Feng see something different about Junior? Feng Zai's eyes flickered with green light. He slowly said, you are only a mid-core formation cultivator, yet you dared to bravely enter so deeply into the seas, relying on that marvelous chi restraint technique of yours. Chi restraint technique. Hanli paused for a moment, suddenly recalling the nameless incantation in the Hyde book. Feng Zai wore an odd expression and said, that's right, I am somewhat familiar with your chi restraint technique. I saw it from an old friend of mine, but strangely enough, that technique is something that was secretly passed down. How are you, a human cultivator, capable of using it? Hanli couldn't easily mention the matter of the Hyde book and remained silent for a while, not knowing how to respond. When Feng Zai looked at Hanli's expression, he leaned back into his chair and smiled. He then casually said, there is no need for fellow Taoists to be worried. My old friend has been dead for many years, and I'm not looking for an explanation. I'm merely curious about how a human can use a secret demon race technique. The main reason why I haven't attacked you is actually because you cultivate a pure wood attribute cultivation art. Otherwise, you'd already be dead. Hanli revealed amazement. He was truly shocked to hear that the main reason he wasn't attacked was because of the attribute of his cultivation art. When Feng Zai saw Hanli's shocked expression, he said nothing and waved his arms instead, summoning a simple gold pot with a flash of white light. He then took a jade wine cup and poured a dark green liquid into it. In the blink of an eye, the concentrated smell of alcohol spread throughout the hall. The human-formed demon beast then took a deep breath and wore an infatuated expression on his face. He flicked the cup with his finger, smoothly sliding the jade cup over to Hanli. Feng Zai stared at Hanli and deeply said, fellow Taoist Li, take a taste of my jade fire wine. I made it myself. It is a genuine spirit wine that takes over 100 years to ferment and provides slight gains towards cultivation. Perhaps fellow Taoists could even use this opportunity to break through his bottleneck. When Hanli heard this, he paused in surprise before staring down at the green liquid in the cup. The demon cultivator was able to tell that his cultivation was stuck at a bottleneck. His abilities are truly remarkable, but Hanli found it dubious that the wine could help him break through his bottleneck. He had consumed no small number of medicine pills for cultivation progression. If he could break through the cultivation bottleneck with medicinal power, he would have already cultivated to the 9th layer of the Azure Essence Sword art. Furthermore, as he had no idea about what the other party intended, he didn't dare to casually drink the wine. As these thoughts churned through his mind, Hanli's face revealed hesitation. A cold glint shone within the demon cultivator's eyes. His expression grew sullen upon seeing Hanli's hesitation, and he coldly said, what? Are you scared that I did something to the wine? Don't forget, if I wanted to take your life, it would only take me an instant. Hanli's face paled and his gaze fell upon the wine cup. He then summoned the courage to say, Senior is correct. However, Junior wishes to figure something out first. The true reason why Senior hasn't killed me. Junior will be ill at ease until he understands. It had become obvious that the demon cultivator wished for Hanli to drink the wine. As a result, Hanli's doubts only became greater. Feng Zai felt somewhat surprised, and an icy expression soon appeared on his face. His body released an eerie aura. Hanli felt his heart drop, and the true essence in his body wrapped around the celestial ice pearl in his body. He cautiously stared at the demon cultivator in silence. A short moment later, Feng Zai frowned and his expression relaxed. After muttering to himself for a moment, Feng Zai said with a low voice, it seems by not telling fellow Taoists the specifics, he has misunderstood my good intentions. This jade fire wine is not only difficult to refine and takes 100 years to ferment, but it also requires a metamorphosis stage demon core as its primary ingredient. Additionally, only windbreaker beasts are able to refine the wine. Even if other demon cultivators had the formula, they would be unable to refine the wine due to lacking the innate abilities. To me, this wine serves only to satisfy my tastes. To a core formation cultivator such as yourself, it will stimulate the true essence in your body the first time you drink it, possibly allowing you to break through your current bottleneck. Of course, the only reason I am giving you so precious to fellow Taoist Li is for my own gains. I require the assistance of your wood attribute cultivation arts for something very important. However, a mid-core formation cultivation is too low. Even late core formation cultivation is still a bit lacking. But I see that your own cultivation arts are unordinary. You possess far deeper magic power than cultivators of a similar grade, and as a result, you will do, if just barely. It should now be quite obvious what consequences will follow if fellow Taoist Li doesn't drink the wine. Feng Zai knew that if he didn't give a clear explanation, Han Li wouldn't obediently follow his orders. When Han Li heard this, his expression changed several times. A short moment later, he spoke with a hoarse voice, "And if I drink this wine and can't break through my bottleneck?" Feng Zai sneered and calmly said, "He. Then fellow Taoist Li will no longer serve any purpose for me. Since my jade fair wine is quite difficult to refine, I will have to take your life as compensation." Although Han Li had already suspected this, his face twitched after hearing the confirmation. After a short moment of deliberation, Han Li's face became resolute and he took a deep breath. "Fine, I'll drink it." Feng Zai suddenly wore a happy expression. Han Li slapped his hand onto the table. Then, with a flash of azure light, the dark green liquid from the cup flew into his mouth in a stream. The liquid then dropped into his stomach without Han Li even tasting it. "Good, I knew fellow Taoist Li would make the sensible decision. Follow me, I've already prepared a quiet room for you." Feng Zai spoke with a satisfied expression and stood up before walking to the side of the hall. Han Li wordlessly followed after him with a calm expression. As Han Li followed the demon cultivator, he eventually found himself in front of a fire-red stone wall. After some further examination, Han Li astonishingly discovered the sparkling red stone wall was actually a huge slab of cut coral rock. As Han Li pondered about it, Feng Zai lightly pushed the stone wall, revealing a 3-meter-wide hole in a flash of white light. Feng Zai pointed to the hole and tranquilly said, "Refine the wine in this hidden room. According to my estimates, it should only take half a year at most to refine. Fellow Taoists should be able to succeed in that time. When the time arrives, I will release the restriction and allow you to come out." Han Li took a glance before expressionlessly entering the hole. At this point, he naturally had no intention of further speaking with Feng Zai. Just after Han Li walked in, the opening behind him disappeared. Feng Zai stood outside the wall without immediately departing. He glanced at the wall with a face bizarrely full of excitement. A short moment later, he disappeared without a trace in a flash of white light. Han Li was currently inspecting the so-called hidden room inside the coral wall. The room couldn't be considered small, at 100 meters wide and over 20 meters tall. Apart from a glistening azure jade couch at the center of the room, there was nothing else. But what was most baffling to Han Li were the countless small holes that filled the walls. They appeared just like bits of black sesame. Han Li's face grew gloomy for a moment, and he sat down on the jade couch in a cross-legged position. With his eyes closed, he slowly released his spiritual sense from his body. After a short moment, he spread his spiritual sense across the room and was surprised to discover that the walls repelled it. Soon, he confirmed that there were no gaps that his spiritual sense was able to slip through. Han Li then frowned, opening his eyes with a cold glint. After some thought, Han Li sat up from the jade couch and walked towards the side of the room. He inspected the coral wall in front of him with narrowed eyes. He extended a finger that glowed with blinding azure swordlight toward the wall. The light was only several inches long and continuously glistened. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 544, Progression. A trace of hope flickered within Han Li's eyes, but that was soon replaced with disappointment. The small sword was only able to penetrate several more inches before stopping. A colorful brilliance faintly glowed deeper within the wall, blocking its advance. The demon cultivator had placed many layers of formidable restrictions within the coral wall. It wasn't very likely Han Li would be able to break through the walls with his magic treasures. Han Li tightly creased his brow after retrieving the magic treasure and summoning it back into his body. He then unconsciously reached for the spirit beast pouch at his waist. He trusted that regardless of how powerful the wall's restrictions, they wouldn't be able to resist the vicious bites of the gold-devouring beetles. However, there was a reason why he didn't rashly release them. The beetles wouldn't be able to devour the restrictions in a short amount of time. In the time it would take, the demon cultivator Feng Zai would be given plenty of time to perceive their actions, and with the demon's astonishing speed, there was no way for Han Li to escape his pursuit. After a period of heavy and repeated deliberations, Han Li fiercely glared and then returned to the jade couch with an unsightly expression. By that time, he already felt a burning sensation in his stomach. It seemed the jade fire wine was about to take effect. Han Li didn't dare to be negligent of the wine as he was ignorant of what, if any, peculiar aspects it might possess. He could only relinquish his thoughts of escape for the moment and start refining qi. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes, peering into his body. Frowning, Han Li shot out a stream of azure core flame from his tricolored golden core and compressed the jade fire wine into a ball. In the blink of an eye, the stream of core flame had completely restricted the jade fire wine. Not longer after, Han Li became completely still with a blank face. The jade fire wine was refined at an exceptionally slow pace. After the passing of a month, less than a fourth of the wine had been refined. It seemed that Feng Zai wasn't exaggerating when he said that the wine would take half a year for Han Li to refine. However, this extremely slow speed proved to be rather irritable to Han Li. If he truly was unable to enter late core formation, then this windbreaker beast named Feng Zai would take his life without any hesitation. For that reason, he steeled his heart and took the risk of forcing out all of the core flame his golden core could produce. As a result, the azure flame that covered the remaining dark green liquid nearly doubled in thickness. Han Li also spared none of his magic power in his effort to hasten refining the wine. This resulted in Han Li's magic power expenditure nearly doubling. Each time he nearly ran out of magic power, he lamentably took a drop of the myriad-year spirit milk to ensure that his magic power could persist in fueling the wine refinement. After 2 months of this extravagant usage of his core flame, only a third of the wine had yet to be refined. Han Li felt somewhat relieved that the wine would soon be entirely refined. Unfortunately, something unexpected soon occurred. As a result of his intention to strive his hardest in the face of death, Han Li had swallowed the celestial ice pearl on the day he had encountered the demon cultivator. He continued to keep it there in fear of the demon cultivator, and had yet to take this last resort out of his stomach. On a day when Han Li had completely exhausted his magic power, and thought to take a drop of the myriad-year spirit milk, the outer layer of the divine devil-bane lightning on the celestial ice pearl suddenly grown unsteady. Han Li, who had been observing his body's interior with full focus, was shocked out of his wits at the sight. At that moment, his magic power was completely exhausted, and he was incapable of taking any emergency measures. With the pearl's exterior wavering before his eyes, he wrapped the remaining jade fire wine around the celestial ice pearl in an act of desperation. Han Li's heart heavily thumped as he watched on with a bloodless complexion. Only the heavens would know what reaction would occur from using the jade fire wine to envelop the celestial ice pearl. As Han Li imagined the pearl erupting, he could feel his body line with ice-cold sweat. Fortunately, whether it was due to sheer luck or due to the celestial ice pearl being stable to begin with, the celestial ice pearl had become tranquil after being enveloped by the wine. Han Li let out a long breath and wiped the cold sweat off his brow. He felt as if he had just escaped certain death. He hurriedly swallowed a drop of myriad-year spirit milk. After his magic power had been replenished, he spat out the pearl and put it away with great trepidation lingering in his heart. Placing that item within his body had truly been playing with fire. After everything was settled, he took another look into his body and flustredly discovered that he had unknowingly broken through his bottleneck, quietly entering late core formation. Han Li was initially dumbstruck, before being delightfully surprised. To tell the truth, he hadn't felt any peculiar effects from the jade fire wine. Han Li was absolutely bewildered at having broken through the bottleneck without even completely refining the wine. With his increased cultivation, Han Li decided to test it out by skillfully controlling 24 bamboo cloudswarm swords simultaneously, discovering that his true strength had suddenly increased. Although Han Li was rapt with joy, he had no intention of squandering the remaining jade fire wine, and sincerely spent the next 2 months refining what was left over, consolidating his cultivation in the process. Afterwards, he started to rack his mind for what the grade 9 windbreaker beast intended for him. As the half-year point gradually grew closer, his face grew increasingly sullen with worry occasionally appearing in his eyes. Several days after the half-year point had passed, the coral wall promptly opened. Feng Zai's indifferent voice then entered the room. "Fellow Taoist Li, come out. The time has arrived. Did your cultivation progress?" Sitting down on the jade couch, Han Li expressionlessly opened his eyes and wordlessly walked out of the room. Feng Zai was waiting for him outside with narrowed eyes. The demon cultivator examined Han Li after he left the room. A short moment later, Feng Zai rubbed his palms together and heartily laughed. Good, good. Congratulations on fellow Taoist entering late core formation. It seems my Jade Fire wine didn't go to waste. Feng Zai grew quite happy. With Han Li's successful advancement, he truly could serve his purposes. Han Li's heart stirred upon seeing this. Feng Zai chuckled and spoke to Han Li with a rather amiable tone. Fellow Taoist Li, follow me. I will give you an introduction to two of my close demon companions. I will be requiring you three to cooperate in order for this to succeed. There are another two seniors. When Han Li heard him, he felt shocked. That's right. My two good friends are both at the initial metamorphosis stage. In human terms, they would be grade 8 demon cultivators. However, since both of them were born from primordial races, their true capabilities aren't all that inferior to my own. Still, it would be best for you to say as little as possible. Since they are genuine members of the local Sea clan, they won't receive a human like you very favorably. Feng Zai took a deep glance at Han Li and gave him a calm warning. With a shaken heart, Han Li muttered in agreement. A short moment later, Feng Zai brought Han Li back to the large hall where he now saw the two close friends that Feng Zai had spoken of. As a result, Han Li couldn't help but reveal his shock on his face. One of them had the head of a flood dragon, a steel tail, and his body was covered with blood-red scales. The other had a rather large body, an azure face and a tortoise shell. That flood dragon appeared quite similar to the venomous flood dragon that he had previously seen fighting the cultivators near the Misty Island. As for the other, Han Li faintly guessed that it was most likely the huge tortoise that had been undergoing its tribulation at that time. When Feng Zai arrived, the two grade 8 demon beasts turned their heads over toward them. When the venomous flood dragon saw Han Li's expression, his green eyes coldly glinted, and he quickly examined Han Li. What's wrong, human? Could it be you've seen me before? He icily asked. Although his voice was somewhat vague, his words could clearly be heard. Han Li immediately grew hesitant. It appeared that because he had used the blood-red cape back then, his appearance hadn't been seen. As such, it would be best to avoid mentioning the battle that day. Otherwise, he would just be asking for trouble, leaving him no choice but to deceive the venomous flood dragon. With that thought, Han Li dryly coughed, and with the calmest expression he could muster, he said, "This is the first time I have seen Senior. It is only that Junior's experience is so shallow that he had yet to see a true flood dragon. As such, I forgot my manners. I hope Senior doesn't take any offense." Helpless, Han Li assumed the humblest attitude he could to avoid stirring up any trouble. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 545, Thunderstorm Wings. The venomous flood dragon pulverized the large, shiny pearl that it had originally been playing with in its hand and glanced at Han Li with a malicious glint flickering within his eyes. Humph! Humans are all so cunning and sly. I don't care where you've seen me before, but you had better cut the clever business. Han Li's heart slightly shivered, but apart from a bitter chuckle, he said nothing else. Seeing that the atmosphere wasn't to his liking, Feng Zai hastily interjected himself. Enough. Fellow Taoist Li can now be considered to be acquainted with you little brothers. I wish to draw from the support of all three of you, and it would be quite troublesome if I were to lack any of you. He then directed Han Li to a seat that was farther away from those two. The venomous flood dragged down the wine in the cup in front of him and carelessly said, "Brother Feng, we've known each other for quite a few years already. Why are you treating this matter so mysteriously? You've yet to give us an explanation. Additionally, you require the assistance of a human cultivator, and a trifling core formation cultivator at that." "That's right. I'm also quite curious. You insisted for us two to come together. Could it be that Brother Feng is doing something dangerous?" The demon tortoise with a thick shell on its back frowned. He may possess an extremely large body, but he appeared rather timid. Feng Zai smiled and slightly spread out his arms. "There is no need to worry, fellow Taoist Gui. I didn't call you two over to deal with a formidable enemy or to travel to a dangerous area. Rather, I wish for your assistance in refining a magic treasure." Refining a magic treasure. The tortoise and flood dragon paused for a moment before glancing at one another. A trace of amazement also appeared on Han Li's face. Feng Zai slowly said with a feverish expression, "That's right, I am preparing to refine a magic treasure to fit onto my own body." Did we hear correctly? Brother Feng wishes to refine a magic treasure. Don't tell me you've forgotten that the bodies of us demon cultivators are better than any magic treasure. What material could possibly be refined to be stronger than one's own body? The venomous flood dragon shook his head in disapproval. The demon tortoise nodded his head in agreement and said, Brother Wu's words are undoubtedly true. The might of any magic treasure will undoubtedly be inferior to the innate bodies of us demon cultivators. Rather than wasting time on external items, wouldn't it be better to further cultivate one's own abilities? For example, with regards to Brother Wu's flood dragon constitution, his innate water attribute techniques have become 100 times stronger than other races with only slight cultivation. With your spirit aviary constitution, you should have exceptionally good aptitude towards wind attribute techniques. By cultivating your firestorm wings to a deeper stage, you should be able to travel tens of thousands of miles in an instant and roam the seas as you please. As for my profound tortoise constitution, although it isn't as remarkable as either of yours, my shell will become invulnerable when it is cultivated to the sentient transformation stage. How could a human refined magic treasure possibly compare? Fengzai didn't grow angry at their words. Rather, he wore a relaxed smile and said, Given how long I've cultivated, how could I not know this? However, the magic treasure I wish to refine is profound. It is a pair of spiritual wings. With these thunderstorm wings, I am confident I will be able to roam the skies without limits. Thunderstorm wings, the demon tortoise absently blinked. It seemed he was at a loss. That's right. A few years ago, when I toured the deep seas for cultivation, I came upon an ancient cultivator's ruins and discovered the remains of a huge bird. Although only its silver wing bones remained, they still possessed an astonishing amount of lightning energy. I suspect the wing bones belong to of a peak metamorphosis stage lightning rock. You should know that the lightning rock is a primordial bird that possessed extreme speed. It could be considered among the top 10 of high-grade, bird-type demon beasts. Its speed was similar to a flash of lightning, far superior to that of a windbreaker beast. Thus, I was struck with a sudden inspiration of bringing the bones back to my cave dwelling and using them along with other bird wing materials to create a human-like magic treasure and affix it to my body. Fengzai's eyes glistened as if he was unable to contain the excitement in his heart. He then added, after refining the wing bones, they naturally can't be solely lightning attribute. A bit of wind attribute spiritual power must be added as well so that I may use them more easily. Is that even possible? The venomous flood dragon revealed a doubtful expression. The demon tortoise at his side also appeared skeptical. Don't worry, I've already spent a year researching the wing. I even went as far as to change my appearance and headed over to the humans for their tool refining texts and instruction. Afterwards, I combined them with my firestorm wing refinement methods to come up with the current plans to refine a magic treasure. While I don't dare to say that success is certain, the odds are at least 80%. Of course, you won't be helping me for nothing, regardless of whether the magic treasure succeeds. The windbreaker beast spoke confidently. He started speaking in voice transmission, not wishing for Han Li to hear what he said regarding their compensation. Han Li sat calmly at the side, turning a blind eye to what was happening. However, he had placed both of his hands on the table, unconsciously revealing his annoyance, contrary to his calm expression. Han Li knew that the three demons' conditions were unfavorable to him. However, he had no rights to be asking questions in their presence. He could only stifle his curiosity and think of his own countermeasures in silence. After discussing it with the demon tortoise, the flood dragon eventually agreed. Good, since Brother Feng mentioned those conditions, we will definitely provide our assistance. Fengzai was delighted to hear that and confidently smiled. With your earth attribute techniques, you'll be able to use your formation spells to temporarily create lightning attribute spiritual power. I'll be able to combine wind spiritual power into it with my own wind attribute techniques. But in order to balance both powers, we'll require fellow Taoist Li's wood attribute cultivation arts to counteract any disparities in power from either side. With this, the wind and thunder will hopefully be able to succeed. When his gaze fell upon Han Li and saw that he was sitting there without a word, he suddenly thought of something. A strange expression suddenly flickered within his eyes and he gave Han Li a beaming smile. Fellow Taoist Li, I forgot to tell you. Although the Jade Fire wine can assist in a human's cultivation, the wine was something that was prepared for the consumption of demon cultivators after all. As a result, human cultivators will experience a trace of chaotic malicious qi. Although there is nothing wrong now, soon enough, the malicious qi will spread and mix with one's true essence, resulting in a detonation of one's spiritual power. After he said that, Fengzai immediately closed his mouth and coldly stared at Han Li in silence. Han Li merely sighed with a frown, displaying neither panic nor fury. Han Li slowly asked with a tranquil expression, "If Brother Feng can help me eliminate this malicious qi, then please speak. Will I only be able to survive if the magic treasure refinement succeeds?" This caused a trace of surprise to momentarily appear in Feng Zai's eyes. The other two demon beasts also revealed an interested expression upon hearing Han Li. Fellow Taoist Li is a sensible person. Since you already know this, I won't further speak of it. So long as the thunderstorm wings are successfully refined, I will remove this future ailment. But if it fails, you will be the first target of my frustrations. You had best dissolve any fantasies of dissolving it on your own. Even if nascent soul cultivators were willing to assist you, they wouldn't be able to eliminate the chaotic malicious qi left over from the Jade Fire wine. He spoke with a chilling voice and displayed not the slightest emotion. I know what must be done. Han Li nodded his head but bitterly smiled in his heart. He also refrained from saying anything in his mind, fearing that it would somehow affect his later performance during the magic treasure refinement. As Han Li was brimming with the feeling of helplessness, the three demon cultivators were having a leisurely chat at the table. Feeling that the odds of success with the refinement was high, Feng Zai cheerfully asked the Flood Dragon, "I heard that little brother Wu's Flood Dragon clan has partaken in the unfathomable depths assault on human cultivators. Is this matter true? I've always recalled that Flood Dragons hadn't bothered themselves with these matters." "Humph, that's right. This time, there are a few experts from our clans that have decided to act. How else could the rubbish from the unfathomable depths possibly have succeeded in their attack? Were it not for our assistance, they wouldn't have been able to exterminate the two nascent soul cultivators." The Flood Dragon didn't bother to conceal the matter in the presence of Han Li. Although no clear emotion appeared on Han Li's face, he couldn't help but reveal some surprise. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. Patrons can also receive previews to unreleased chapters. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 12+ chapters a week. Chapter 546, Sacred Provenance Plate. As Han Li felt bewildered by the Flood Dragon's comments, Feng Zai chuckled and said, "I heard that a few years ago, when fellow Taoist Wu had acted as a protector for Brother Gui's tribulation, several human cultivators launched an attack on him. Although you managed to repel them in the end, you suffered a bit of injury. Could it be that, as a result of that battle, the Flood Dragon clan had decided to attack? Your demon clan has always valued protecting their own. In those years, the cultivators of that island were far too arrogant. They truly believed that the seas belonged to them. They even equated us metamorphosed demon cultivators to those low-grade demon beasts that had yet to shed their beastly bodies. They were simply asking to be destroyed. My situation was merely one of many triggers for the attack." With that said, the savage Flood Dragon paused for a moment before continuing, but most important of all was the humans' attack on a grade 7 lion dragon one, Suani, the hybrid of a lion and a dragon, from the unfathomable depths monarch clan. As a result, the venerable Lord Lion Dragon didn't hesitate to consume their strength to issue a myriad demon writ, resulting in several tens of thousands of demon beasts laying waste to the humans' islands. The reason why my Flood Dragon clan lent their assistance wasn't as revenge for the Lion Dragon, but rather for the sacred provenance plate that had been passed down from generation to generation. It was taken away by humans from the Lion Dragon when it was slain. Although it was badly damaged and had no true value, it was an item that has been continuously circulated throughout our demon clans. It cannot be allowed to fall into human hands. The savage Flood Dragon then flashed a harsh gaze at Han Li. Feng Zai's expression stirred, and he looked at the Flood Dragon with a strange smile. "I have heard of the Lion Dragon being slain, but nothing of the sacred provenance plate. Could it be that without the inherited keepsake, the Lion Dragon clan would find it difficult to remain the monarchs of the unfathomable depths? Is your Flood Dragon clan thinking about unseating them?" "I don't know much about that. After all, I've never taken much interest in the clan's internal affairs. However, I am very interested in the three sacred provenances technique recorded on the plate. I've heard that the might of these ancient secret techniques are amazing. Unfortunately, those techniques have long since been damaged by time and are impossible to reconstruct." The Flood Dragon's face revealed excitement before being replaced with regret. The demon turtle suddenly burst into laughter and said, Brother Wu is quite greedy. Those secret desolate techniques are just legends from how I see it. I can't believe those techniques to be superior to your clan's dragonification arts." When the flood dragon heard that, a trace of pride appeared on his face. That may be. My clan's dragonification arts are capable of turning flood dragons into true dragons when the deepest level is cultivated. As such, it is naturally the peak cultivation art among demons. Fengzai chuckled, without adding anything further. The sacred provenance plate. When Han Li heard this, he was able to maintain his calm expression despite the restlessness in his heart. He suddenly thought of the copper plate that he had recently acquired. The copper plate recorded demon cultivation arts that possessed seemingly great might. Could it be that he had happened to acquire the item that the demons were discussing? Although he didn't know the specific uses of the sacred provenance plate, he came to realize that the item was cause for trouble after hearing that it was something that was passed down by demon clans from antiquity. Could that dark-skinned cultivator have been the main offender that brought about the beast torrent? It wasn't impossible for a mid-core formation cultivator, such as himself, to slay a grade 7 demon beast. Han Li didn't feel particularly worried as he mulled over these thoughts. He could already be considered drowning in misfortune. As his life could be forfeit at any one moment, Han Li couldn't bring himself to care about yet more trouble that had befallen him. It would be better for him to not dwell on any of those matters while he was still here. At the moment, Fengzai turned to Han Li and indifferently said, "Fellow Taoist Li, as you've recently entered late core formation, you should consolidate your cultivation. I don't wish for you to suddenly be incapable of using your magic power during the magic treasure refinement. Follow after the light and return to your room for a bit of further cultivation." With that said, he flicked a ball of white light from his fingers, leading out one of the doors. Without a choice, Han Li could only stand up with a forced smile and follow the light out of the hall. He had actually wished to further listen to the secret matters of the demon clan. As he walked outside the hall, he suddenly heard Fengzai indifferently warn him, "Fellow Taoist shouldn't rashly leave the room. Otherwise, I will misunderstand and trouble will arise." The three demons behind him saw Han Li slow down before wordlessly continuing on his way. The flood dragon looked in the direction that Han Li had disappeared with an odd gaze and said, "Is there a problem? From how I see it, the young one doesn't seem resigned. A surprise could occur during the treasure refinement." Fengzai sneered and said, "Be at ease. The success of the thunderstorm wings will mostly depend on us three. The human will merely be a tool to provide would attribute spiritual power. Once the treasure refinement has started, he will have no control. Not to mention the malicious chi that is contained in his body. With that in mind, he is completely powerless." The demon turtle suddenly smiled and teasingly said, "Now that you mention the chaotic malicious chi, the Jade Fire wine shouldn't have such a thing. Could it be that Brother Feng entrapped him?" Fengzai fixed the silver scarf on his head and evilly grinned, "He, of course. I gave him a specially refined cup of Jade Fire wine. The malicious chi should actually be called devilish chi. In an encounter with a formidable devil Dao cultivator, he summoned something he had refined from his body, leaving devilish chi on my body. It proved quite troublesome to remove." When the flood dragon and the tortoise demon heard this, they smiled at each other with their last doubts dispelled. At that moment, Han Li had followed the white light sphere into a stone room. It was elegantly decorated. Not only was there a couch refined from white jade, there was also a table with a set of chairs along with many pots of rarely seen plants. After Han Li entered the room, the white light orb suddenly dissolved itself. When Han Li saw this, he immediately closed the door to the stone room and then took out several differently colored formation flags from his robes. He placed them at each corner of the stone room and enveloped the room in a small spell formation. Han Li felt somewhat at ease from being free of the demon cultivator's surveillance. Although the spell formation had no defensive qualities, it would give early warning of any outsiders' malicious eavesdropping. Although this would certainly annoy the windbreaker beast, he wouldn't make a big deal over this small matter. With that thought, Han Li changed his focus to the most important worries. He walked in front of the couch and sat cross-legged on it before closing his eyes. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Han Li opened his eyes with a furrowed brow. His body appeared exactly the same as it was before. There was nothing amiss. It seemed the demon was tricking him with false words. He had absolutely no perception of the malicious chi in his body. Han Li stroked his chin with a pensive expression. After a moment of deliberation, he suddenly took out an item and examined it for a moment before revealing a harsh expression. 2 days later, Fengzai knocked on Han Li's stone door and then walked in. Upon seeing Han Li, the human-formed demon beast wore an excited expression and said, "Let's go. We will be refining the magic treasure today." Fellow Taoists Wu and Gui are waiting for us in the tool refinement room. He then brought Han Li out of the room and headed towards his tool refinement room. After following the demon cultivator for a short distance, Han Li arrived in front of an azure jade wall. Feng Zai slapped that wall without any hesitation, causing an arched gate to appear and open. The demon cultivator then stood to the side, indicating for Han Li to enter first. Han Li first took a quick glance through the door and saw that the room glowed red. He could faintly feel a roasting heat from within. With eyebrows raised, he took a deep breath before walking in. Han Li's gaze then revealed a trace of astonishment after clearly seeing what was inside. The flood dragon and demon tortoise were both standing inside the room, but Han Li was more surprised to see the fire within. There was a square platform that spanned about 10 meters at the center of the room. It was filled with roaring scarlet flames. There was a huge, complex refinement formation that surrounded the platform. After taking several quick glances at it, Han Li was left amazed. With his current knowledge on tool and spell refinement, he could tell how impressive this formation spell was, despite not immediately recognizing its profound complexities. It wasn't something that he was capable of establishing. The two demon cultivators coldly glanced at Han Li when he walked in before paying him no further heed. All right, everyone has arrived. I've already explained the spell formation's refinement principles to brothers Wu and Gui. Fellow Taoist Li, all you have to do is stand at the corner of the formation and provide a steady stream of wood attribute spiritual power to the formation. Now that we've come this far, fellow Taoist Li had better refrain from thinking about anything silly. Feng Zai pointed to corner and looked at Han Li with a heavy gaze. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. Patrons can also receive previews to unreleased chapters. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 12+ chapters a week. Chapter 547, Lightning Rock Bones. After taking a glance at the pit of Earthfare, Han Li responded with a bitter smile. What use is there in thinking about silly things now? Then it is good that fellow Taoist understands. Although Feng Zai said this, he wore a trace of a sneer. It seemed he didn't believe Han Li's words. When Han Li saw this, he managed to preserve a bitter expression on his face, but he inwardly cursed, "Damned monster." He then walked to a corner of the room and sat down cross-legged. After seeing that Han Li obediently sat down where he had pointed, Feng Zai nodded his head in satisfaction and turned to the two demons, politely saying, "Brothers, let us enter the formation and prepare." When the two demons heard this, they stepped forward without objection and stood at the formation's cornerstones as previously discussed. Feng Zai lightly smiled and patted the storage pouch at his waist. The pouch unhurriedly flew around the Earthfare pit before turning upside down and releasing a burst of radiance. A small silver ball of light pierced through the radiance and soon expanded. In the blink of an eye, it revealed a pair of sparkling white wing bones that were each about 3 meters long. One of the wings was missing the front half, while the other wing was completely shattered. Although they appeared worthless at first glance, these sparkling bone fragments emitted an enormous pressure that left one in awe. The flood dragon gazed at the bones and clicked his tongue in amazement. So this is the wing of the lightning rock. Although it is extremely damaged, it appears completely genuine. It is deserving of its title as a bird of desolate antiquity. Feng Zai stared at the bones with a feverish expression and said, "That is only natural. The lightning rock didn't die in meditation. The reason why its bones were broken should be because someone had trapped it there and ambushed it. Otherwise, with its amazing speed and its peak metamorphosis stage cultivation, it definitely would have been able to flee." At that moment, Han Li was glancing at the lightning rock wing bones in appreciation. The demon tortoise didn't seem to be particularly interested in the bones. After glancing at it for a moment, he said with unusual impatience, "Let us start on refining it. We don't know how many months it will take." Feng Zai paused after hearing this, but he immediately thought of something and broke out into laughter. "Ha! I've forgotten that Brother Gui entered metamorphosis stage less than 100 years ago. He'd naturally feel uneasy towards lightning attribute items. Well then, let us start without delay." The flood dragon didn't raise any opposition to starting. With that said, the demon beasts' bodies gradually released an astonishing demonic chi, each filling the room with white, blue, and yellow radiance. Han Li didn't know whether the formation spell was activated from the demonic chi or some other method, but the formation started to glow and slightly sway before it finally started to revolve. The tens of mid-grade formation stones that surrounded the formation each began to release a blinding gleam. Han Li felt restless as he watched the scene occur. Feng Zai let out a shout and brought his hands together. He parted his hands and shot two arm-thick beams of white light down into the formation. With a low hum being released, the ground began to tremble for a moment before the earthfire started to rampage at the center of the room. Foosh, a head-sized ball of flame shot out from the pit and directly floated above the wing bone. The flame then ruptured, enveloping the wing bone in scorching scarlet flames. The flood dragon and the demon tortoise exchanged a glance before raising their hands and releasing threads of yellow and blue radiance. The numerous, densely packed threads of radiance penetrated the flames and wrapped around the bones. The bones then began to soften amongst the intertwining lights. A short moment later, the two used those spirit threads to mold the bones into a more complete shape. As Han Li watched this, he felt as if his perspective had been greatly widened. With the other two demons molding the bones, a strange light glinted within Feng Zai's eyes, and he grasped his hands in an incantation gesture and repeatedly shifted his 10 fingers in a rapid manner. Tens of thumb-sized balls of white light subsequently appeared and accurately fell upon the bone wings. In that instant, deafening rolls of thunder began to sound out from the flames. The mended wing bones had begun to release countless sparks of lightning. The sparks were extremely slender and shined with silver light. They began to quickly strike and merge into the blue and yellow spiritual threads. After the spiritual threads absorbed the lightning, it flourished with silver light, overwhelming the threads' original color in an instant. When Feng Zai saw this, he solemnly stomped the ground, sending an incantation seal into the spell formation. With several muffled crackles, the variously colored beams of light began to shoot out from the earthfire pit. Simultaneously, the wing bone's radiance converged into a blinding single point. Han Li unconsciously narrowed his eyes. By the time his vision had returned to normal, there was a dense, luminous rainbow barrier that had appeared above the earthfire pit. Han Li's expression stirred for a moment before he managed to recover his expressionless face. The white wing bones were intensely scorched by the earthfire within the light barrier, but not the slightest change had occurred. Upon seeing this, the three demons all let out a long sigh. The first step was completed without any mishaps or mistakes. Afterwards, Feng Zai took out an azure, transparent gem with a relaxed expression and tossed it into the light barrier without any hesitation. A short moment later, the gem melted into a semi-liquid. Feng Zai hastily released white spirit threads and manipulated the melted gem to evenly coat the wing bone's surface. Feng Zai still appeared quite vigilant after all this was done. He glanced at the other two demons with slight significance and softly said, "Wind." He then took a breath and spat out a white translucent pearl, sending it into the light barrier in an instant. The flood dragon and demon tortoise didn't dare to delay and also spat out their long cultivated demon cores. The demon cores intertwined with one another as they spun through the air. Feng Zai raised his hand and struck his demon core with an incantation seal, immediately arousing a white, wind attribute core flame to wildly erupt from the demon core. Under the control of the flood dragon and demon tortoise, they also had their demon cores release a finger-dense string of core flame. The blue and yellow strings of flame intertwined with a crackle before turning into a silver flame. The silver and white flames were then immediately absorbed into the surrounding earthfire, resulting in the earthfire immensely growing in pressure. Afterwards, the spirit-infused flames enveloped the wing bones, and it slowly began to be refined. Feng Zai revealed an expression of unconcealed joy on his face and called out to the other two demons before sitting down cross-legged. The flood dragon and demon tortoise soon followed suit. A moment later, the huge formation spell became deathly quiet. Silently sitting alone in the corner, a strange expression flickered within Han Li's eyes several times. But after taking a look around, Han Li could only bitterly smile. Due to some unknown designs of the formations, at the same time the rainbow barrier had formed above the earthfire pit, an identical formation had appeared around Han Li, trapping him inside. Were it not for the absence of flame inside Han Li's barrier, he would have entirely suspected that he was also a material to be refined. Han Li had grown even more uneasy upon seeing that he was still left alone after so long, but at that moment a change had suddenly occurred. With a flash of light, the light barrier began to pulsate. Han Li narrowed his eyes for a moment before recovering his indifferent expression. Before he could even guess what had happened, he suddenly felt something amiss from his body. He couldn't help but fearfully lower his head. As the rainbow light barrier around him pulsated, he saw faint wisps of azure light visibly leaving his body. Although it was quite slow, his spiritual power was undoubtedly being drained from his body and into the light barrier. Hanli frowned with a sullen expression. It seemed the three demons had no plans of having him meddle with the treasure refinement. As such, he was only being treated as a huge spirit stone. But after some further thought, his expression returned to normal, and he inwardly sneered. He didn't believe that the three demons would hold him there forever. He reckoned that they would have him assist them sooner or later. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. Patrons can also receive previews to unreleased chapters. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 12+ chapters a week. Chapter 548, Combining Wind and Lightning. Although Hanli had anticipated that the treasure refinement wouldn't merely take a few days, he was quite shocked to find that the three demon cultivators sat cross-legged in complete stillness for 5 entire months while refining the bizarre material with their core flames. During this period, apart from stopping 4 times to recover their magic power, they had kept their demon cores suspended in the air, continuously spouting out core flames in a leisurely manner. Their statuses as grade 8 and 9 demon beasts clearly weren't just for show. Their magic power was truly profound. Because Hanli was refining chi the entire time, he had managed to preserve his full state of magic power. The minuscule amount of magic power that the light barrier consumed could hardly be considered significant. The wing bones within the core flames had become increasingly translucent and bright with each passing day. It also faintly carried the sounds of thunder and sharp wind. The joy in Feng Zai's eyes became more obvious as this occurred. Hanli knew that the finalization of the thunderstorm wings was approaching. In those several months, Hanli was puzzled to find that not a single trace of the malicious chi could be found from within his body. However, after some further thought, he felt that it had something to do with the divine devil-bane lightning in his body. They had a miraculous efficacy against things of evil nature. Could it be that the malicious chi had already been exterminated by the divine devil-bane lightning? Hanli felt delight at the thought. Had the malicious chi truly appeared, he had planned on using the divine devil-bane lightning to get rid of it, or to take the risk of swallowing some gold-devouring beetles and having them forcefully consume it. As a result, the Windbreaker Beast's method of coercion was unable to inspire any fear in Hanli, not that he had taken it seriously to begin with. The old demon definitely wouldn't have expected for Hanli to possess such an astonishingly valuable magic treasure with his low cultivation. Without any worry of this later harming him, Hanli became even more resolved to resist. He quickly swept through the many plans he had previously made to escape. He was prepared to use the most optimal plan according to how the situation played out. After yet another month, Feng Zai rose from his seat and began to take action, as if he felt that the refinement was about to be done. From the moment he opened his eyes, he stared at the bone wings in the air that were on the verge of completion. With a deep sigh, he suddenly shot a dozen incantation seals at it and suddenly extinguished his core flame, revealing the 3 demon cores and 2 bone wings that were within. The demon cores were comparatively dimmer than before. It seemed the persistent strain of the demon cores over the months of use had harmed their origin chi. Contrarily, the bone wings had become slender and whole, emitting a milky white luster that was nearly blinding. Without any hesitation, Feng Zai flicked his own demon core, causing it to wildly rotate around in the air before returning down his throat. The other 2 demons glanced at each other before doing the same. Wordlessly, the 3 demons began to immediately meditate and rest. Several days later, the 3 demon cultivators had replenished their magic power and origin chi. At that moment, Feng Zai turned his gaze to Hanli. He shot an incantation seal at the light barrier entrapping him. Red radiance bored into the light barrier, causing it to dissolve with several violent flashes. Hanli possessed an entirely tranquil expression that was void of any surprise. Feng Zai's expression grew relaxed and he said, "Next, we will be joining the 2 wings as one and merge lightning and wind together. We will require fellow Taoists would attribute magic power to act as a balance. Get yourself prepared." Understood. Without saying anything further, Hanli stood up. When Feng Zai saw Hanli's expression, he frowned and hesitation flickered within his eyes. He lowered his head and muttered to himself for a moment before suddenly flicking his finger without warning. A streak of white radiance shot straight towards Hanli. Han Li's expression grew aghast, but after a moment of hesitation, he didn't move out of the way. With the white radiance entering his body, Han Li wore an unsightly expression. Han Li pursed his lips and sullenly said, "Senior Feng, what is the meaning of this? Be at ease, the wind spirit energy will not harm you and will disappear after a short amount of time. But during this time, if I were to trigger it with a slight bit of magic power, fellow Taoist is as good as dead. Do your best and don't think about anything else," Feng Zai sinisterly said. Han Li inwardly grumbled upon hearing that. Over half of his plans to escape had just been eliminated. Feng Zai was quite pleased to see Han Li's angry expression. Without paying further attention to Han Li, he took out 3 medicine bottles from his storage pouch. Afterwards, he tossed 2 of them to the other demons. Feng Zai solemnly exhorted, "Little brothers, be careful. Combining wind and lightning spiritual power will be very taxing on our magic power. These bottles each has a drop of myriad-year spirit milk. Use it when your magic power is exhausted. The merging process must go smoothly. Otherwise, the thunderstorm wings will never come into being." A trace of amazement flickered within the flood dragon's eyes when he heard that the bottles contained myriad-year spirit milk. He soon agreed, "Please be at ease. I will certainly spare no effort." The demon tortoise to his side slapped his chest and pledged, "As will I. I also wish to see what profound abilities the thunderstorm wings will display upon completion." Feng Zai wore a satisfied expression after hearing their responses. He then wordlessly rubbed his hands together before holding them out and shooting a bowl-thick beam of white light towards the rainbow light barrier. The light barrier trembled and released a low hum for a moment. Afterwards, it flickered and continuously shifted colors until it shined with a blinding white radiance. When the flood dragon and demon tortoise saw this, they rushed to shoot out their own blue and yellow beams of light at the barrier. Halfway to the barrier, the beams of light converged to turn into a white beam of lightning spiritual energy before then striking the barrier. In an instant, the light rumbled and the light barrier underwent another change. Rolls of thunder began to sound from within the barrier as it pulsated with a silver radiance. Upon seeing the barrier flicker, Feng Zai unhesitantly ordered Han Li with a deep, icy tone, "Fellow Taoist Li, pour in 1/10 of your cultivation spiritual power." Han Li hesitated for a moment and his expression stirred. Feng Zai could definitely end him from controlling the wind spiritual energy inside his body. He could only raise his hand and shoot a finger-thick beam of azure light into the barrier. A strange scene occurred. The instability and hums released from the light barrier were instantly reduced. The brilliance had also dimmed and became slightly more stable. Feng Zai's expression relaxed and he excitedly said, "Good, continue to supply the spiritual power." It appeared that his plan to combine wind and lightning energy was coming into fruition. When the other 2 demons saw this, their confidence greatly increased. They started to form many various complicated incantation gestures and strike countless spell seals against the light barrier. After a short moment, the light barrier began to reveal a furious white gale contained within it, along with bolts of silver lightning. The lightning and wind energy wrapped closely together around the bone wings and started to merge. Feng Zai then called for Han Li to pour in further would attribute spiritual power as he gazed into the light barrier. In the following week, huge bolts of silver lightning and furious white gales rampaged within the barrier. The 3 demons grew tense and continuously struck the light barrier with their incantation seals. Feng Zai appeared particularly intense. As Han Li watched them from the side, he continued to pour his wood attribute spiritual energy into the barrier under their orders. However, a trace of a strange, excited expression flickered within his eyes, but in the end, Han Li decided against taking any rash actions. He felt the opportunity had yet to arrive. Three demons couldn't conceal their fatigue. Although their incantation seals didn't cease, their magic power was definitely on the point of exhaustion. Although the violent storm of lightning and wind inside the light barrier was intense, a strange union began to form. The violent winds began to flicker with sparks, and the lightning began to carry cries of the wind. The 3 demons wore unconcealed joy upon seeing this. On the next day, the demon tortoise had exhausted his magic power and took the drop of spirit milk. In the following days, the flood dragon and Feng Zai followed suit. Han Li expressionlessly looked at this and gripped the storage pouch in his hands. His eyes contained a difficult-to-perceive trace of slyness. When the 3 demon beasts' magic power had been exhausted, and the magic treasure had yet to be fully refined, that would be his moment to act. Han Li had originally thought this plan to be unreliable, but under the current circumstances, it had become somewhat feasible. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. Patrons can also receive previews to unreleased chapters. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 12-plus chapters a week. Chapter 549, Intrigue. After another 20 days passed, the interior of the barrier had become tranquil. The violent storm had disappeared to reveal a pair of silver-white wings. The missing flesh around the lightning rock bones had been replaced with precious materials, and the feathers were replaced with lightning and wind. With this, the pair of wind and lightning wings had taken form. Although the wings currently appeared completed, in truth, the feathers' wind-lightning power had only just taken form and had yet to stabilize. As a result, the clearly exhausted Xianxia had forced himself to pour even more magic power into the barrier, fearing that their previous efforts would go to waste. Xianxia felt quite gloomy as he did this. He had originally believed that the 3 drops of spirit milk that he had specially acquired for them would be sufficient, but he didn't expect that their spiritual power would be depleted while just on the verge of the wing's completion. Fortunately, under the current circumstances, he could choose to damage his origin chi and forcefully support it until the end. Otherwise, the magic treasure would be lost forever, and he would be inflicted with incurable regret. But during that moment, the grade 9 demon beast suddenly felt a strange fluctuation of chi inside the room. Although it was very weak and only occurred for a short time, it was extremely pure. He swept his gaze across the room with narrowed eyes, eventually arriving upon Hanli. Xianxia's face turned sullen. Hanli revealed shock, but he immediately forced a smile. However, Xianxia continued to coldly gaze upon him without emotion. "Take it out," the demon cultivator ordered. "What does Senior want?" Hanli's expression grew increasingly strained and artificial as he quietly withdrew his hand from his sleeve. A cold glint flickered from Xianxia's eyes. He wordlessly pointed at Hanli, shooting a ball of dazzling, pulsing white light towards Hanli. Hanli was initially stunned before he immediately released a miserable scream. He fell to the floor and thrashed about with an agonized expression as his complexion turned purple. "Humph, if you won't listen to words, then listen to force." A hostile gaze flashed across Xianxia's face as he gazed at the small bottle that fell out of Hanli's sleeve. With a strange expression, he grabbed toward the small bottle and had it fly to his hand. Xianxia glared at Hanli and bluntly said, "Is the flare of wind spirit energy unpleasant? You had consumed quite a bit of spiritual energy recently, but you've recovered quite a bit of it. It seems the bottle should hold some spiritual medicine. Did fellow Taoist Li plan on taking advantage of our deprived state to flee by using his recovered spiritual energy?" After the demon cultivator ceased his technique, Hanli was barely able to stand back up. His face paled as if his scheme had been exposed. Xianxia glanced at the small bottle. "Why, aren't you clever? Let's see what is in the bottle. I've never heard of something besides from myriad spirit milk that is able to recover spiritual power in an instant." The flood dragon curiously said, "I've also never heard of such a thing. However, it has come at a useful time." At that moment, the demon tortoise and flood dragon were striking the barrier with incantation seals and accelerating the fusion process between the lightning and wind. Although it seemed that the demon tortoise was doing slightly better than the flood dragon, his magic power was also heavily depleted, and he was barely able to persist. Xianxia opened the bottle with a thumping heart, catching a whiff of pure spirit chi. He glanced at the bottle before bringing it to his nose and taking a sniff. The demon tortoise was unable to keep calm and closely questioned, "What is it?" Xianxia glared at Hanli and coldly said, "Speak." Hanli crestfallenly hung his head and reluctantly said, "It is a flask of diluted myriad-year spirit milk." When the demon tortoise heard him, his spirit trembled with surprised delight. "What? You also have myriad-year spirit milk?" As the 3 demons didn't believe that their magic power could persist until the end, they were greatly overjoyed. "Humph, it's green. It seems you mixed something else within it too, and it has heavy wood spiritual chi." Xianxia examined the small bottle with suspicion. Hanli bitterly smiled and sincerely answered, "I mixed a few aged spiritual medicines within it. Because I practice a wood attribute cultivation art, wood attribute spiritual chi would naturally be of great benefit to me." Xianxia frowned and thought to ask more when the demon tortoise loudly yelled, "Brother Feng, quickly pass the spirit milk over and let me drink it. I know that, although we will be able to persist with great difficulty, we will overdraft our origin chi and cause our cultivation to decline. I need to replenish my spiritual qi. The demon tortoise feared that Feng Zai wouldn't agree and grew anxious. Feng Zai hesitantly responded, "Of course I know that, but this spirit milk." After a moment of silence, the flood dragon said, "Brother Feng, I can sense the pure spiritual qi from so far away. It is myriad spirit milk without a doubt. Even if the spirit milk was sabotaged, what harm will it do to us? Moreover, I am a venomous flood dragon, a devourer of all poisons. Even if the bottle is poisoned, it will have no effect against me." It appeared they both didn't wish to squander their origin qi. I had nearly forgotten about Brother Wu's innate poison ability. Since this is the case, let us split the spirit milk into 3. This way, we won't suffer much damage to our true essence after we complete the refinement. Feng Zai silently smiled and stretched his neck back, pouring a third of the spirit milk down his throat. He then tossed the bottle to the venomous flood dragon with a chuckle. As a grade 9 demon beast, he had no fear of any poison, and since the spiritual qi was genuine, he had no thoughts of letting it go. The flood dragon caught the small bottle and drank half of what was left in the bottle, before handing it off to the demon tortoise. The demon tortoise then impatiently gulped the rest of the spirit milk and flung the small bottle to the side. Not long after, the 3 felt some of their magic power recover, and they let out a breath of relief. Feng Zai no longer held any of his original suspicions in mind. At that moment, a cold glint flickered in the flood dragon's eyes as he sent Feng Zai a voice transmission. "When we're done refining the treasure, the human cultivator will no longer have a use. Let me finish him off. The human makes for an irksome presence." When the flood dragon finished speaking, he coldly swept his gaze over Han Li and displayed harsh killing intent. Feng Zai unconsciously turned his gaze to Han Li and indifferently said, "Don't get rid of him for the time being. Although we won't need his wood attribute spiritual qi in the following days, it is better to be careful. You can kill him after the wings have finished." "Fine, then the human will have a few more days to live." The flood dragon's tone was unsatisfied, but he decided to agree to wait in the end. Han Li had only seen their lips move and was unable to know what they said. However, his body broke into a chill when their hostile gazes fell upon him, and he could faintly guess what they were talking about. His face grew unsightly after some thought, and he wordlessly sat down cross-legged on the floor. He then slowly closed his eyes as if he were resigned to death. The 3 demons paused after seeing this, but they paid no more attention to Han Li and completely focused their attention on the spirit wings. In truth, Han Li's heart was heavily thumping at that moment. He was slowly transferring slivers of faint gold lightning from his bamboo cloudswarm swords into his body, controlling it so it wouldn't erupt. Afterwards, layers of divine devilbane lightning began to densely coil around the ball of wind spirit energy that Feng Zai had planted within him. The wind spirit energy wasn't something that Han Li could refine at his current cultivation, and it wasn't something that the devilbane lightning could cleanly dissolve. However, he could restrain it for the time being and prevent it from flaring out, drawing from his experience in binding the celestial ice pearl. At that moment, the demon tortoise had recovered a portion of his spiritual power. Just as he effortlessly continued to pour spiritual power into the light barrier, he glanced at the flood dragon and suddenly thought of something. He thought to say something, but his mouth suddenly trembled and his expression twisted. With an odd gaze in his eyes, the demon tortoise ceased sending spiritual power into the light barrier and fell to the ground. His mouth was wide open, but not the slightest sound was produced. An astonishing scene followed. The demon's abdomen had suddenly expanded. In the following moment, his head and limbs also began to swell with protrusions, as if evil spirits had suddenly emerged from within his body and wished to break free. When the flood dragon and Feng Zai saw this, their expressions greatly changed, and they simultaneously recalled the diluted spirit milk from Han Li's small bottle. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. Patrons can also receive previews to unreleased chapters. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 12+ chapters a week. Chapter 550, Helplessness in a Crisis. The venomous flood dragon bellowed, and his body flourished with scarlet light as he thought to immediately attack Han Li. But at nearly the same time, the demon's face immediately grimaced, and he fell to his knees with a bang. He helplessly stared at the swelling in his body and remained still in his powerlessness. "You're courting death," Feng Zai furiously yelled. A flash of white light flickered from his face, his body then disappearing from sight. A moment later, he appeared behind Han Li and fiercely swiped down with a black claw. His movements were near instantaneous. Although Han Li had already prepared himself, he still wasn't able to keep up with his movements. He could only do his utmost to throw his body to the side. Clang! Han Li was pushed away by a huge force and was thrown over 30 meters away. Han Li then stood back up with obvious difficulty. The single strike of the Grade 9 Demon Beast's claw wasn't able to immediately kill Han Li. The Demon Cultivator couldn't help but pause, an ominous glint soon flickering across his eyes as he stared at where he had struck Han Li. The tears in his clothes revealed silver-white scales. A majority of them were shattered from the strike, revealing a twinkling, jet-black cloth underneath. Inner armor. Feng Zai was greatly surprised, but he soon scoffed and wordlessly turned into wind once more, disappearing without a trace. The inner armor was clearly an extremely fine treasure for it to be able to withstand one of his strikes. However, the armor wouldn't be able to save his life a second time. Han Li also recognized his previous survival to only be a result of luck. He was sure that strike should have been able to kill him. Man Husey's royal scale plate was truly an extraordinary treasure to be able to ward off a strike from a Grade 9 demon beast. With the precious time the armor had bought, Han Li firmly regained his footing. Golden lightning surged throughout his body without the slightest thought, accompanied by a blinding flourish of azure light that took the form of a huge azure essence sword shield. He also raised his arms and summoned 24 azure swords from within his body, instantly forming a barrier around him. Just as Han Li finished doing this, Feng Zai's tall stature appeared in front of Han Li yet again. With a sinister glare, he opened his mouth and revealed a blinding white light. Han Li's expression abruptly changed, as he inwardly cursed in helplessness. He was fundamentally incapable of surviving if the old demon was going to use his demon core in a direct attack. As Han Li felt his heart freeze, Feng Zai suddenly closed his mouth and his body swayed. His face wore an unsightly expression as he lost his footing. Han Li was immediately roused from his shock, noticing that the demon cultivator had started to tremble. Moreover, his abdomen began to show protrusions. Although this old demon had a much deeper cultivation than the other two, the effects of the green liquid had eventually taken hold. Han Li was overjoyed and pointed at him, without the slightest hesitation. The 24 bamboo cloudswarm swords surged towards Feng Zai and began to wildly strike at him from every angle. After only a short moment, Han Li's smile grew rigid. Although the windbreaker beast was painfully on his knees and his hands were tightly gripping his abdomen, he had managed to envelop his body in a layer of faint white light. The flying swords alone weren't able to break through the light barrier in even the slightest. Additionally, the demon cultivator was still able to force his head up to fiercely glare at Han Li. Although he couldn't speak, his eyes were full of malice. With a single glance, Han Li felt his heart drop. Pondering for a short moment, Han Li concluded there should be some sort of treasure protecting Feng Zai. Otherwise, he definitely would have been able to slay Han Li with even the slightest control over his magic power, given his immense hatred for Han Li. Han Li's heart grew calm at the thought, and he quickly formed an incantation gesture with his hands. The flying swords merged together, forming two balls of blinding azure lights. The two balls of light faded away to reveal two azure swords about 10 meters long. They glowed with an imposingly cold light. With a strange expression flickering within his eyes, Han Li silently opened his mouth and spouted a cloud of azure chi onto each sword, causing them to flourish with splendor. With a series of light hums, they then chopped down towards the windbreaker beast. The huge swords fiercely struck the white light with a bang. Azure and white light intertwined, but in the end, the two swords were only able to cut several inches into the white light before they were forcefully repelled. Han Li blankly stared at the scene, but Feng Zai wore a trace of a sneer. Han Li couldn't help but tremble upon seeing his expression. Although Feng Zai was crippled, Han Li had no method of harming him. Apart from the throbbing in Feng Zai's swollen abdomen, there wasn't much of a change to his limbs or head. The demon cultivator seemed to be forcefully suppressing the effects of the green liquid. Han Li's expression changed as he suddenly threw of something. He hastily turned his gaze to the other demons and felt his heart tremble. The flood dragon and demon tortoise still had inflated bodies. However, their heads and limbs had started to shrink. It appeared that their bodies were releasing the spiritual chi without restraint. It was clear that they were suppressing the green liquid, but at a much slower rate than the windbreaker beast due to their lower cultivation. Han Li instantly pointed to the two huge swords, causing them to strike the two demons as streaks of azure light. Since the swords couldn't deal with the windbreaker beast, it would be better to first deal with the other two demons. Afterwards, Han Li steeled his mind and slapped the spirit beast pouch at his waist. Countless gold-devouring beetles filled the room. With a low-pitched whistle, Han Li directed them towards Feng Zai. Feng Zai's eyes revealed astonishment upon seeing the beetles appear. In the following moment, the countless beetles enveloped the white light in layers and started gnawing at the white light. At that moment, the two huge swords chopped down upon the demon tortoise and flood dragon. Although their eyes widened, they couldn't move in the slightest. They could only watch as the azure sword struck their body. Two violent clangs were produced from the strike, but not the slightest damage was done. Han Li was left stunned by the result. How could this be? The windbreaker beast has a treasure protecting his body that is able to block the flying swords, but these demons were able to repel the swords with their bodies alone without receiving even the slightest damage. How could the bodies of these grade 8 demon beasts be so hard? Of course, Han Li wasn't about to give up after just this. He pointed to the two huge swords and caused them to release arm-thick bolts of lightning onto the two demons. The two demons appeared quite pained upon receiving the lightning, but they remained uninjured. However, their expressions only grew most hostile as a result. Presumably, their first thoughts after regaining control of their bodies would be to tear Han Li apart. Han Li felt a slight pang of fear at the thought, and then turned his head over to look at his gold-devouring beetles. After some thought, he had the gold-devouring beetles float into the air and reveal the demon cultivator underneath. Although the white light had somewhat dimmed, the demon beast was still safe and sound underneath the white light. It was truly proving difficult for Han Li to deal with. Even after the simultaneous feasting of tens of thousands of gold-devouring beetles, they had only managed to slightly weaken it. The power of Feng Zai's protective treasure was truly beyond reason. Just as Han Li hesitated on whether he wanted the gold-devouring beetles to continue swarming around Feng Zai regained the ability to speak. The demon wore a vicious expression as he strenuously spoke. "Human, do you believe that a trifling core formation cultivator is somehow capable of dealing with metamorphosis stage demons? In a moment, we will give you a taste of what it means to desire death." Although his tone was calm, his words were staunch and threatening. When Han Li heard those words, he regained clarity of mind. "Humph, is that so?" Without further hesitation, he pointed to the gold-devouring beetles in the air, causing them to change direction towards the other two demons with a ferocious buzz. The two huge swords then made their way towards the rainbow light barrier. Feng Zai saw Han Li's actions and started to panic. He hurriedly yelled at him with a fearful expression. "Stop! What folly are you up to? Do you wish to be pursued by all the flood dragons in these seas? And the thunderstorm wings have yet to be completed. If you take them out now, all will be lost. Furthermore, those spirit wings can only be controlled using both spirit and lightning power. What use is there in you taking it?" Han Li sneered and showed no sign of stopping. The insect swarms fell upon the two demons in an instant, and the two huge sword strikes had nearly collapsed the rainbow refinement barrier. After all, the barrier's purpose was to refine magic tools. It wasn't made with defensive capabilities in mind. Feng Zai's green eyes grew crimson upon seeing this, but the strange ailment that affected his body continued to prevent him from taking any action. In the following moment, the venomous flood dragon released a heaven-shaking screech. Scarlet bloodlight ruptured from within the beetles. Upon touching the bloodlight, the beetles immediately turned into drops of black liquid and released yellow smoke. The scarlet mist was amazingly toxic. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. Patrons can also receive previews to unreleased chapters. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 12+ chapters a week.